3 years of supervisory experience is required and may be part of the required experience or another portion of the applicant's work history. Job title, Director, Consolidated Dispatch Intergovernmental Agency. Code number 550. Application deadline, until filled. Minimum training and experience. Possession of a bachelor's degree and 5 years of professional.
This November 7th City Commission meeting will come to order. Madam City Manager.
Would you please stand and join me in the invocation? God our Father, we assemble this evening grateful for democracy and the brave men and women who serve to protect our freedoms. Thank you for those who participated in the democratic process on yesterday and for those veterans who have protected our democracy in the past, as well as those who are currently serving. We ask that you grant courage, wisdom, and foresight to our newly elected officials nationwide, that they may serve with a focus on the needs of all of our citizens. This evening, we ask that you guide our thoughts and actions as we conduct the business of this government. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you please remain standing for the playing of the national anthem by the Leon High School Marching Redcoat Band.
Well, I really think they deserve another round of applause. Oh, and it is a pleasure to have the band director, Brett Pekuritz. Did I do that right? Good. His staff in the Leon County, Leon High School Marching Redcoats with us this afternoon. Again, thank you all for being here. This seems to be very fitting in light of recent circumstances, and one of them is last night's election for America. We're here. We've got new leaders. We have leaders now in the White House. We have leaders in Congress. We have leaders in the Senate. They're there. We're elected, and we're ready to go for another at least 4 years, maybe 2 years or so. And I know you all are glad that this election is finally over. It's a wonderful tribute to have a band here, the Redcoat Band here, to play the national anthem under these circumstances. The other is that this is, we're going to talk about this a little later. One of our current commissioners, I don't know if you played in the band, Mark, did you?
I did.
Mark Mustian. Mark, please stand up. Go ahead.
The uniform is still the same as when I was there. Still hot, still wool, and my son plays in the Leon Band.
Okay.
He plays drum, plays a big bass drum. I play the trumpet. But I wanted, let me brag on the band just a minute, because you're probably going to say this, but I know more about it than you do, because these guys won the marching championship, right? Out of how many schools? 20-something? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Mr. Pekuritz, this is his first year as a band director. This is kind of like winning the BCS if Jimbo Fisher had won it the first year there. So a real big deal. So congratulations to the band.
Well, you're correct. I'm glad that the Commissioner Mustian recognized that, and so I don't have to go through all of that, but nevertheless, we want to congratulate you for what you have done, the Leon High School Marching Redcoats Band. And this was a tri-state event, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, and they beat out all of those other states in this competition. And so we're very, very, very proud that you've done that. And it was the 8th annual Battle of the Borders Band Competition. And our band is number one.
All right.
All right? Our band is number one. We really appreciate that. And with that, I do have a proclamation. Whereas the Leon High School Marching Redcoats are led by head band director Brett Pekuritz and marching band staff members Susan Farrell-Locke, Mike Windle, Winlin, and Kendra Winlin. And whereas the Leon High School Marching Redcoats competed on Saturday, October 20, 2012 in the 8th annual Battle of the Borders Marching Band Competition at Martin Stadium in Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. And whereas the 8th annual Battle of the Borders Marching Band Competition consisted of 20 high school marching bands from Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, the competition had 2 rounds, and the top 8 bands from the preliminary round moved forward to perform again in the final round. And whereas the Leon High School Marching Redcoats successfully progressed out of the preliminary round and won first place as the grand champions of the competition. Now, therefore, I, John R. Marks, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby honor the Leon High School Marching Redcoats and ask all the city to join me in recognizing and congratulating them for their outstanding performance and achievement. Thank you very much again.
Thank you all so much. I know this is the end of your day, so hopefully we can bring some joy to your afternoon or to the end of the day or wherever you are might be in your day. We're so gracious and humble to be here. Thank you very much for having us. These kids work their tails off, and that's the only way to say it, and it's still an understatement. And they'll stand up here before you, and they will act humble, and they will act like, and they will deny everything. No. But they deserve every accolade and all of the attention that they get, because Lord knows I hold them to a very, 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 very high standard. And they show up every day, and they work, and they're just there because they want to get better, and they love music. So it's really great. Thank you so much for recognizing us for this. I think even more importantly than what recently has happened is that we were also invited to perform next year in the New Year's Day parade for London.
Awesome.
And this is not because of myself. This is because of band director Mr. Thornton and the band directors before him. There's a long running tradition at Leon High School, and we just hope to maintain it and keep it going. If anything, raise the level and keep doing good things over there a couple blocks down the road. So I'm just really excited for the kids because they work so hard and they deserve things like this. And again, thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to your support. Not only in the community this year, but also gearing up for the London trip next year for the New Year's Day parade. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all so very, very much for what you are doing, and keep it up. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prickles. Kyle Reynolds. Is Kyle here? Come up here, Kyle. Just stand right there. Kyle is a Cub Scout. Or are you? No, you're not a Cub Scout anymore because you got a Boy Scout uniform on. He is here today to watch this commission meeting as a part of his citizenship in the community badge. So, Kyle, I hope you stay through the whole thing. No, does he have to stay all through the entire meeting? Whoa. Did you bring your homework with you? Thank you, Kyle, for being here. We always want to recognize the Boy Scouts. I was one, and Commissioner Mustian and others were part of the Boy Scout program, and we think it's a wonderful, wonderful way.
And the Girl Scouts.
And Girl Scouts.
The Girl
Okay,
Scouts.
all right, okay. And Girl Scouts. Excuse me on that one. But thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Okay? Now.
We're on agenda mods, Mr. Mayor.
No, we got another presentation.
We were coming back to presentations.
You gonna come back to number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay, you let me know.
Yeah.
Are there any agenda modifications?
We have 4. We have item number 5. We have, first of all, deletions. Item number 5.02, which is the proclamation for NIMS Middle School District Football Championship, and the mayor presented that.
Yeah, that was
earlier
presented this
today.
morning at NIMS School. Those kids were just absolutely wonderful, too. They really appreciated it. That football team, middle school football team, went 2 years in a row without a defeat. And it was really a pleasure for me to be there this morning.
The second item was 9.04, approval to award asphalt milling and in-place asphalt milling services. And item number 9.05, approval to award asphalt concrete materials. Both of these are being moved to a future agenda because we have a grievance that needs to be heard on both of these before we move forward. Also, 9.06, approval of surveillance services. Jim Cook, the city treasurer clerk, asked that this item be moved to the next meeting so that he can complete something that didn't get completed. We have a couple of additions on tonight's agenda. The item 11.03, approval of contract for state-level general lobbying services that the Mayor Marks will be presenting, and 13.08, compensation package for the city attorney effective January 1st, 2013, and Raul Lavin will be presenting that item.
Okay, and with that,
We go
we're
back
at
to 5.01, the second
is-
presentation.
citizens input?
Second presentation.
Oh, now you want to go to presentations? Okay. Will Mike Johnson, mechanic with the City of Tallahassee's Star Metro, please join me at the podium? How you doing, Mike?
Hey, John. Good to see you again,
Good
sir.
to see you as well. Over the course of the past year, the city has, as a whole, has had the privilege of being recognized for several statewide and national honors. Quite a few city employees also receive accolades for their personal leadership. Our city auditor has received national praises. Both our fire chief and police chief have received statewide commendations. And now, Mr. Mike Johnson with Star Metro has received the Florida Public Transportation Association's Mechanic of the Year Award. This award is a testament to the dedication of your craft and your ability to improve this government through service that you provide. And as mayor and on behalf of the commission, I am very proud of the acclamation that you've received, and that this honor brings tremendous honor on the city of Tallahassee and our community. And to recognize your achievement, I would like to present you with this proclamation. Whereas Star Metro mechanic Mike Johnson received Florida Public Transportation's FPTA Top Award, Mechanic of the Year, at this annual conference in Daytona Beach, Florida. Whereas the Florida Public Transportation Association named Mike Johnson Mechanic of the Year in 2008. Making Johnson the only mechanic to receive this prestigious award twice. Whereas Johnson began his career at Star Metro in 2005, since that time he has received numerous certifications from the National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence, including Master of Transit, Master of Heavy Medium Truck, Master of School Bus, Master of Truck Equipment Specialist, Master Automotive Level 1, Level 2 Advanced, Certified Parts Technician, and Certified Service Consultant. Wow. That's saying, not only is it a mouthful, when do you have time to do all of that stuff? You know? Whereas Johnson also, with other mechanics, regularly maintains and services Star Metro's bus fleet comprised of 71 buses, 17 dial-a-ride vehicles, and several support vehicles. Whereas Johnson is a native Floridian, born in Jacksonville and raised in Brevard County. In Brevard County, Johnson taught automotive classes at the local community college and owned his own automotive business. And whereas Mike Johnson is a veteran who is active in local motorcycle club that coordinates charity events for returning veterans, Johnson also serves as the Sergeant at Arms and concession cook for the J. Lewis Hall Senior Park and Recreation Complex in Woodville. Johnson's support system comes from his family.
Amen. They do.
You want to come up? You want to come?
Couldn't do it without them, that's for sure.
Comes from his family, wife April, son Brian, and daughter Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin. How you doing? Good. Now, therefore, I, John R. Marks III, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby honor Mike Johnson, Star Metro, and ask all the city to join me in recognizing and congratulating him for his outstanding accomplishments. Mike Johnson, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be an employee with the city, and as John said there, when do you find the time? It's hard. I have a very busy schedule, but if it wasn't for the support of my wife and my kids, I couldn't do what I do, and I thank them. Thank you all.
Mike certainly exemplifies the kind of city employees that we have, dedicated to their job and dedicated to, dedicated to the citizens of this community. Again, Mike, thank you so very much for your service. Thank you. Next item.
Next item is item number 8, citizen input on agenda items.
Do we have any input?
Mayor, we have several speakers tonight. The first will be Dr. Irwin Jackson, commenting on item 1102, which is appointment to the Ethics Advisory panel and adoption of bylaws. He'll be followed by Curtis Baines, and then we have a couple of additional speakers after that.
Erwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. I received a notice in the mail a few days ago that you had appointed an ethics committee. 5 of the 7 members were attorneys. This fact concerns me greatly. I don't think you'll find very often the term ethical conduct and lawyers in the same sentence. Remember, it was lawyers who created the state's ethics policy, which in fact is inadequate in holding public officials accountable and lacks any real enforcement power. I submitted my name to be on the panel. I felt this commission could show that they in fact were truly serious about creating a comprehensive ethics policy by appointing me. The public would know at least one person is representing them. Unfortunately, I was not selected. I've been told that it was because some commissioners felt I would be difficult to control. That could be true if, in fact, this commission, this committee, does not come up with a real comprehensive ethics policy that we so desperately need. I'd suggest that also maybe a first-grade teacher should have been appointed and would have been a better choice. A teacher can explain to children the difference between right and wrong. In contrast, attorneys argue that the self-serving actions of their client was not illegal. For example, was this commission's decision to give themselves deferred compensation wrong? Yes. Was it illegal? We still don't know, but we must find out. I want also to suggest if this appointed board members were concerned about the self-serving actions of these elected officials, I would hope they would have joined me 2 years ago when I first brought these concerns to the public's attention. Finally, I will be attending these ethics meetings. I will be providing input to this process as appropriate, and I'll be reporting to the public during the future City Commission meetings. Therefore, I want to publicly request copies of any and all documents presented to these members, and also be notified of any schedules, meetings in the future. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Curtis Baines. He'll be followed by Karen Windland. Mr. Baines is also on item 1102.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Curtis Baines, 1323 East Tennessee Street. I just wanted to, I think one of the things you're dealing with here is something far worse than any conflict of interest. You're dealing with a perception of a conflict of interest, and perceptions are going to be a far more difficult thing in my view to dispel than any actual conflict of interest. And for that reason, I want to make sure after reading the agenda item, my impression was that this is going to be a review of the city's existing ethics provisions, but I want to make sure that the charge is not so narrow that they cannot consider other issues that probably ought to be included in an ethics ordinance or provisions. For example, I think they should be free to consider requiring full and public disclosure of finances of our elected officials. I think there should be they should be free to consider outright prohibitions against elected officials entering into any contractual relationships with any city contractors or subcontractors. I think there should be they should be free to consider whether or not to make any civil provisions, civil violations, sanctions for violating the city charter, and also whether or not there should be a provision for making a criminal violation for a willful violation of the charter. And then, because they're probably not going to want everything to go to criminal proceedings. They're probably going to need to be free to consider some kind of administrative process and investigative process to look into those things. So I just want to make sure that when you're discussing this, we're not going to give them a very narrow focus on what your charge is, that they can look at the whole thing and consider other provisions as well. Thank you very much.
Any more speakers?
Karen Wendland is the next speaker. She's addressing item 1302, and she'll be followed by Bill Lessman.
Greetings, Commissioner. I thought I was speaking during the item, so you threw me. I'm here at the beginning. Essentially, I just want to thank you for considering to extend the option on the Johns property for the Performing Arts Center. And we've had some really productive meetings in the last week and a half, and I think the Performing Arts Center, it's a new day, there's a new direction, really exciting things happening, and I'm available when the item comes up to answer any more questions, but basically I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration for extending the option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Lessman is the next speaker, and he will be followed by Bob Fulford.
And what item?
Mr. Lessman is on item 1303, which is the pension item.
All right.
Commission, thank you. This will probably be the last time you see me, so I wanted to speak about the potential changes to the general employees pension that are coming up for your in ordinance. Reducing the benefits for general employees while maintaining benefits for police and fire, I'm simply here to say is wrong. Okay. When I've asked multiple times, what is the financial goal? What are we trying to accomplish? What problem are we trying to solve within to make these changes for general employees and not for other employees? I haven't seen a study or a recommendation yet that says we need to save X number of dollars or we need to save X % of salaries. I've not been provided with that. Commissioner Mustian, who I congratulate on making it through being a commissioner and who I absolutely have the utmost respect for, he and I've had conversations. He stated other cities don't seem to have trouble getting good employees when they eliminate their defined benefit program. But I asked the question, how many of those municipalities own and operate a public power plant, electric utility, water, gas, sewer, solid waste, public transportation? Because those are the type of employees you need to look out for. As I said, this will probably be the last time I get a chance to speak on this issue, and I certainly hope that you'll consider how you're laying the future for the employees who aren't here yet, and that's who I'm speaking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Bob Fulford, and that is the last speaker slip I have for the for this point of the meeting. We do have some speakers when we get to the unagended speakers at the end of the meeting.
He's on which item?
He is on item 1102, the ethics panel.
I'm Bob Fulford. I live at 231 Westridge Drive. I saw on the agenda today that the issue of appointing the ethics panel, so-called, was coming up. And my first thought was how timely. But then I thought, back during the campaign, I heard Commissioner Gillum and Commissioner-elect Maddox both say that we don't need anything like that. We need to elect ethical people. But then I was surprised to see that we are going to get this panel. I talked to an acquaintance of mine, somebody you guys might know, Dr. Carla Reed. She teaches ethics at the university. I asked her if she was coming up tonight. She said she didn't know anything about it. And I found that kind of surprising that somebody that works in the field of ethics didn't even know about it, which suggests to me, since I didn't know about it, she didn't know about it, a whole bunch of other people didn't know about it, and I wondered if you fished far enough to get the members that you got. The way the commission is planned, or the panel is planned, is an unpublished zing that you may or may not see that suggests there are too many lawyers on it, and also wonders, facetiously of course, what lawyers know about ethics. The last thing and the main thing that I would like to suggest is that it's kind of like, somebody's got everything all figured out and somebody else comes up and has a whole bunch of suggestions, and the other guy says, well, where were you when the paper was white? And I know that's how you will feel when I suggest to you that I wasn't here when the paper was white. although this has been part of what I've been saying along and along, I didn't know it was coming on. And I would urge you to not pass this thing tonight. Let's take another pass at it and see if we can't come up with something better. And 3 suggestions I have is, 1, it says in the agenda item that there's no financial impact. There should be. This group, that if it does what I think it ought to do, needs to be funded, and it needs to not be just something you guys can say, they said that. We need a different makeup of the committee, and it needs to be a committee with some teeth, and I hope you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Any additional speakers?
No, sir.
Okay, next item.
We're on consent, Mr. Mayor.
Any, do we have another one? Okay.
Oh, another speaker.
Yes, please help the gentleman, yes. I'm sure he's coming to talk about Star Metro. Come right ahead.
Too predictable. John Plesko, 1504 Belmont Trace. Forgive me for coming in late. Yes, I'm here on Star Metro. You have a report that's being submitted to you today talking about possible options. And I talked to somebody this morning, and I think they came up with a really good metaphor. You know, we keep hearing about this decentralized system and what a great framework it is. Unfortunately, from a bus rider's perspective, talking about this framework is talking about a shell of a house with no walls inside, very few fixtures. It's not there yet. And unfortunately, I think the only way it's going to get there is y'all have to spend more money on it. And I guess the question at this point is that something you're willing to do? Professor Thompson, and I know y'all have heard this and are probably tired of hearing it, said for this system to work, you have to get headways down to every 20 minutes. We're not there. And admittedly, they say travel times are down, but you know, if you miss a bus under the old system, there was redundancy, you were downtown, you could catch another bus. You miss a bus now, you're out of luck for 40 minutes. And unfortunately, I think part of the problem is it might not be seen as a problem for some folks because they don't see bus riders' time as being that valuable. We've been around this, I know a lot. The bottom line is, if you want this system to work, it needs to be more than a framework. It needs infrastructure. It needs more buses, more covered stops, more accessible stops. And it's that simple. One challenge I'll leave y'all with, I know at points in time, y'all rode the bus, and I think one thing, y'all use all city services now. You pay the city utility, you use the roads. I would like a commitment from y'all to at least ride the bus a couple times a month so that you'll understand how that city service is working. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Any additional speakers?
No, sir.
All right, we've heard those speakers on those items, and those things will be taken into consideration when we get to those particular items. Next is consent agenda, I think.
I'll move the consent agenda, Mayor.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the consent, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
Mayor, could I ask you something?
Who is that? Oh, yes.
On consent, the items that, in regards to the asphalt milling contract, that since and I'm asking this because that contract's been expired, when this all, I understand why we're waiting on this to settle the disputes, but when the contract is let, will it begin at some point in the future, or will it begin at October 1st?
I really can't answer that, and I probably shouldn't even try to answer it until we get the grievance resolved.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Next item, excuse me.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is item number 11.01, and it is approval of City Commission appointees to the Cultural Plan Review Committee, and Commissioner Ziffer
Commissioner Ziffer.
is going to present this item.
Certainly, as you can see from the item, this is a continuing process where the city is bringing forward to this commission to vote on 4 names, which have been listed in the agenda item. We have basically 3 positions, and the city's being responsible for appointing the artist. The county will have 3 appointees, plus they'll be appointing a position for a performing artist. Our 3 recommendations are Rebecca Campley-Lutz, Karen Wenlin, who was up earlier, and Kelly Dozier. Our artist is Dr. Audra Pittman. Those are the names being brought before you. Before we vote on those, I did want to bring to your attention, because there are other names that are now available as far as some of the other entities. The Economic Development Council has identified Jan Sheffield, who is with First Commerce Credit Union. The Tourist Development Council has identified their chair, Mark Bauer, Hotel Duval, and a few other entities in town. The Chamber of Commerce has identified Maida Williams. The Capital City Chamber of Commerce has identified Terrence Hinson. Leadership Tallahassee has identified their chair, Bart Wells, and KCCI has identified Betsy Couch as their representative. Also, from representative from the Heritage Community is Altamise Barnes. The county, from what I remember reading, will be voting on theirs in about, I think, their next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. So I would like, I'll move the item.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion to have these individuals served on the Cultural Plan Review Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
Next item is 11.02, appointments to the Ethics Advisory Panel and adoption of bylaws. Commissioner Gillum will present this item.
Great. Thank you, Madam Manager. Commissioners, I am very, very pleased to bring back to you what I think is, and I think you all will agree, is a really high caliber group of citizens in our community who, by the way, all volunteered and stepped up to offer their names under consideration to serve on this ethics review panel. I should also note that a pretty substantial number of the applicants were lawyers, and I'll just admit that I actually don't think there's anything wrong with lawyers. And in fact, I think the ones that have been selected for this purpose are all individuals of high moral character and standing, and don't take my word for it. I think you can judge them by their resumes, the work that they've done, and I think what will be their commitment to this task. Let that be the judge of how they perform. But this commission decided back on September 19th that we thought it important that we appoint a committee to look at the city's existing ethics policies, rules, the hodgepodge of places that they exist within all of our documents, to make sure that we are being as up to date with today's sort of standards, the culture of this community, the expectations that citizens have, not only on our ethics policies and procedures, but also the practices that occur within the government as it relates to ethics, our financial disclosure policies, and recommending suggestions for updates to that to the current disclosure policies, as well as to look generally at the transparency and openness of the government. And we thought that it would be important to survey the community. We had the applications out on the street for quite a while, allow citizens to self-identify whether or not they wanted to step up and serve. And very pleased to share that we got a good, as I mentioned, more than good caliber of applicants who applied. Just real quickly on each one of them, we've already voted on the committee's chair, Martha Barnett. A little on Ms. Barnett, who I think is en route, but we'll see, is a partner at the Holland & Knight law firm, previously served as the chair of the Florida Commission on Ethics from 1986 to 1987, served as the national president of the American Bar Association from 2000 to 2001, and has been a very active community volunteer through a host of various community efforts, and I think that he more than qualifies her based on her community commitment. We also are recommending Justice Harry Lee Anstead, who many of you all will recognize is the former retired Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court, a man with a very, very distinguished career, and I think will add a tremendous amount to this process, and I'm appreciative of him for his service. Mr. John Calhoun. Mr. Calhoun currently serves as the Director of the Office of Ombudsman and Public Services for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. He is also a Chief Petty Officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve, another involved member of our community, increasingly involved member of our community. Glad to have his volunteerism as well. You all will recognize Pastor Brent Copeland, who is the head of staff and senior pastor at First Presbyterian Church, just right down the street. You all know he also heads up the coordinating committee for our homeless response during cold weather seasons, and a pretty well-known community volunteer. Miss Lila Jabber, who is an attorney with the Gunster Law Firm, previously served on the Public Service Commission and was twice appointed by Governor Jeb Bush to that role. She is current chair of Leadership Florida, where she interacts with leaders of various sectors all throughout this community around the state, and serves, of course, on the for Workforce Florida on their board of directors. We have Mr. Joseph Landers. Mr. Landers previously served as the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Regulation and the Director of the Florida Department of Natural Resources for the state of Florida. He also previously served as chairman of the Tallahassee Urban League and is a very, very involved community volunteer. Last and certainly not least is Ms. Andrea Nelson. Ms. Andrea Nelson previously served as the interim Solicitor General in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Lives in Wakulla County, but operates a business here in Tallahassee, Leon County. We are also recommending, given the size of this group, the fact that if any member at any one point in time is unable to continue the full service because the chair has asked for, I believe, up to 6 months for this committee to make its way through the process, which is a pretty, long commitment. And so if any member is unable to serve at any point, we're also suggesting that we approve 2 alternates who would participate in the meetings, offer recommendations. They would not vote, of course, unless in the case in which a member falls off. That first alternate would be Ms. Marilyn Wills. Ms. Wills is a retired educator and a member of the League of Women Voters. She's been a League member since 1968 and has served several terms as president of the Tallahassee League of Women Voters. And then the second alternative we would like to recommend is Mr. Howard Rasmussen, who is retired from the position of Director of Management and Development at Florida State University's Florida Center for Public Management. His experience includes service in law enforcement as well as teaching at both the community college and the university level. We recommend, again, him as a second alternative. Assuming passage of the group tonight, this committee is scheduled to hold its first meeting actually tomorrow morning to answer the questions about whether or not this group will be publicly accessible, whether the meetings will be publicly advertised. The answer is absolutely yes. They will function as a full public committee. Their minutes will be advertised. They are being staffed, thankfully, by the City Treasurer Clerk's office, Mr. Jim Cook, and supported by the City Attorney's Office, the Manager's Office, Although the agenda item says it is cost neutral, it's simply because we're not hiring on any new staff to support this committee, but they will have access to the full breadth of staff support from the existing staff within the various departments and appointed officials. As I mentioned previously, the chair of the committee, Ms. Martha Barnett, has asked that we allow this committee to work over a period of 6 months toward this end. I think it is only right that any highly functioning body, any highly functioning government entity from time to time take stock, review of its policies, and update it. I want to ask if any of the members and alternates to the committee are here, if they would please stand. I know Martha Barnett was rushing in from the airport. I don't believe she's made it into the room yet. I believe Ms. Nelson may be here. I believe Mr. Landers is here. Ms. Wills, I believe, is here. You all will wave to us. There we go. And I am not sure if Mr. Calhoun is here or not. I haven't.
I don't believe he's going to be able to be here. There are a number of folks who are traveling or out of town today, so the ones who are here, we appreciate it, and the other ones had conflict, but hopefully we'll be able to be here tomorrow
Great. And for those of you all here, would you once again just take a collective stand? I'd like the commission to just be able to at least physically see who you are. Again, thank you very, very, very much for your volunteerism, and I'll yield the floor to my colleagues.
Commissioner Muschin.
Well, I just want to thank the people that have volunteered to do this, and also the folks that are going to serve on the cultural committee. I mean, this is it's a large commitment. It takes a lot of time. These people aren't being paid anything. This is totally out of service to the community, and I just appreciate it. So, I mean, I think the quality of both groups is excellent. So, so I really look forward to what they're going to do, and I'll move the item, Mayor.
Second.
Anybody, any other comments? Commissioner.
Just had one. I was one that had a concern that we had public, that we had the community involvement, not just the attorneys. And yet, seeing the qualifications of the people that have applied, also it's a priority for me to have women, to have diversity, and you've done an excellent job in putting together a committee that's very highly qualified. Thank you.
It's a question, and actually it's a follow-up to, I think, a comment that Mr. Baines made. They're not really restricted to just evaluate what we currently have. They can basically come back with whatever recommendations they choose to, can they not?
Well, I think the bylaws set out what they can do, and it's fairly broad.
Right.
Really fairly broad what they can do. I don't think they're going to be restricted from doing whatever. And even if they thought they would be restricted, if they thought they saw something else, I think we would accept it.
Yeah.
So,
the manager reminded me to make mention, some of you all may have, and I definitely believe the public may have, the agenda that had Dr. Stephen Kahn listed as one of the alternates. There has been a change in that since tonight's meeting, and so it should read Mr. Howard Rasmussen, and the staff, I'm sure, are more than willing to supply his background and resume. Just picking up where Commissioner Muschin left off, as you all have probably assessed Stephen so far in this meeting, as sort of serving as a public body, you are subject to all sorts of feedback and comments from the public. And so I want to apologize in advance for subjecting you to anything that may come toward you that may feel improper or uncomfortable. But given your backgrounds and resumes, I know that you're more than able to shoulder it on your own. The committee also has the power to ask for and invite various witnesses, experts. I do know, and I think I mentioned previously, that Dr. Sandy Dallenberg, who I believe served on the first ethics committee of the state of Florida, and is a gentleman who has focused on these issues over the course of his career, has already offered to be one of the expert panelists for this group, among many others. So I know, Mr. Mayor, there's a motion and a second, so I'll just rest there.
Mr. Commissioner Gillum, may I make sure the commissioners also, in addition to approving the names, approve the bylaws? Our policies call for you to approve the bylaws. We've advised the committee members that should they have changes they'd like to make, they'll bring those back to you.
Certainly.
all right, the motion is to approve the slate of individuals as well as the bylaws. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Commissioner Gillum, for your hard work on this. Really appreciate it. Next item.
The next item is item number 11.03, approval of contract for state-level general lobbying services. I believe Rick Minor is going to present that.
Yes, Mr. Minor will handle that for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Madam City Manager. Thank you very much. We're presenting for your review and consideration an agenda item to approve a contract for state-level general lobbying services. As you know, the City of Tallahassee has 3 different lobbying services contracts for its core lobbying practice. One for federal lobbying services, another for the state-level utility-only, electric utility-only lobbying, and then finally the general state-level lobbying. At the last meeting, October 24th, the Commission had approved the contracts for Richard Spees for our federal contract for federal lobbying, and Bill Peebles for our state-level electric lobbying. The last remaining piece, which we're bringing to you today, is for the state-level general lobbying. The evaluation committee met last week for the second time. Their first meeting, they reviewed 3 proposals, and at that meeting in September, the top 2 ranked firms were selected for oral presentations. And then we had the oral presentations last week on November 1st. By virtue of that, those 2 presentations and then deliberation afterwards, the committee is recommending for your consideration Ron Book as the state lobbyist for general services. And we're recommending a contract of a 3-year term to begin November 12th. And I'm available for any questions.
Questions?
Move acceptance.
Second.
It's properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item.
The next item is introduction of ordinance, and it's 12.01, and Jim English will handle that.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Mayor and Commissioners, we only have one ordinance for introduction this evening. It is Ordinance 12036, ordinance of the City of Tallahassee updating the capital improvements element of the 2030 Tallahassee-Lynn County Comprehensive Plan. That'll be set for public hearing on November 28th.
That ordinance is introduced. Next item.
The next item is item number 13.01, discussion of proposed beautification project for Appalachia Parkway and approval of joint participation agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. Commissioners, Appalachia Parkway, US 27 between Magnolia Drive and State Capitol, is known as Florida's most memorable mile. Historically, the Florida Department of Management Services has maintained the landscaping along this mile of roadway. You will remember various conversations that you've had recently about this particular area. The maintenance responsibility was transferred to the Florida Department of Transportation in 2011, who subsequently in 2012 amended the city's annual right-of-way maintenance agreement with FDOT to include this particular segment of roadway. And FDOT, through their district highway beautification program, allotted $300,000 for the enhancing of this particular corridor. We have both FDOT and city staff who've been working together to develop a landscaping plan which enhances the beauty of this corridor, which is really another one of the gateways into the city. What we're asking you tonight is to take a look at the proposed landscaping plan and provide some feedback. We have Gabe Menendez who will answer any questions, and also 2 representatives from FDOT are here to make a brief presentation to you.
Commissioners, any questions, comments?
I believe this has also gone through the long-range planning target issues, so if either Commissioners Mushton or Miller have any comments on this.
Anybody got comments?
Well, I'd suggest, why don't we let them make their presentation and we can offer a few. I mean, we've actually seen this a couple of times at the Target Issue Committee, and I think we're pretty pleased and ready to move forward.
That's okay with me. I know we have seen it, and it's a good idea. Go ahead, Gabe.
We'll make it real brief. Wilson McBurney, the FDOT District 3 landscape architect, is here to make the presentation.
Thank you, Commission, for letting us share this with you. Just want to give you a brief update on what we've been doing along the parkway. And if you just look at the, whoops, yeah, but I already broke it. I'll try this one. If I do it this way. There we go. Beautiful shot of the parkway several months ago. We've spoken about the project, and we've already spoken about the project limits from the Capitol out to Magnolia Drive. It's approximately a mile, a little bit more than that, and that's what we're talking about this evening. The design history, the landscape design history of the parkway started back in the 50s when the roadway was constructed. In the 70s, a major landscape enhancement project came in to install trees, install shrubs along the parkway, really to enhance that corridor. In the 80s, the governor's oak planting project and the heritage oak planting project happened as a part of the local garden clubs and other folks that acted as advocates for that came, and that's when many oak trees were installed with some of the plaques that you see at the bases of those trees. Back in 2010, a stakeholder group convened to look at the overall visual qualities of the corridor. They had noticed that there has been some trees that were cut down, and so there was renewed interest in the visual qualities of the parkway. As a result of that, a pretty fast maintenance project happened within the department to remove some invasive plants, to remove some undesirable trees and shrubs that have come up there. And as a result of that, a landscape project has begun. The goals of that landscape project are to enhance the views to the Capitol. We want to accommodate the views to the local commercial properties along the parkway. And we certainly want the design to be simple, the plants that are installed to be durable and easy to maintain. And we also want them to comply with the DOT's new bold landscape program. Here in District 3, we're calling it our business-oriented landscape development program in order to really want to attract folks and have this really become, again, the most memorable mile here in the state capitol. So our concept is really to build on the bones of the existing governor's oak and heritage oaks that are out there. We want to reunify the corridor with a simple plant palette, one that includes lots of different hardy, again, native color and texture. And we want to utilize the Florida state tree and other Florida native species along the parkway. As we hired our landscape architect, they broke the down into 4 different zones. The activity zone there we call Zone 1, out there where there's lots of commercial activity going on, highly visible now, and that's the corridor, or portion of the corridor that we'd like to have more visibility from the parkway. Zone 2 is the Capitol view, and that's after you're coming to the east. You really get a good view of the Capitol from up there on that bluff. As you move down the hill into the Zone 3, we call that our forest transition area. You come under the CSX roadway. There's actually a great view of the Cascades Park now as you come west on the parkway. And then as we approach the Capitol, we call it our palm approach, coming through some existing palms that are along the parkway and then onward to the Capitol. Our landscape architects then came up with a design concept for the entire mile portion. This is a portion focusing on that zone number 3 near the Cascades Park, again, where we want to build on the bones of the existing landscape and continue to enhance that with additional palm trees, additional plantings in the medians. That have been also, I forgot to mention, the city has done a good job of starting some renovation out there as well in the medians. The plant material that we envision as a part of the final plans will certainly include the existing canopy trees of live oak and magnolia. There are some magnolias on the corridor now. They're swallowed up right now with kudzu that will come out as part of the project. We expect to add additional pindo palms, which is a native Florida palm tree, and also enhance the corridor with additional sable palms, which is our state tree. Understory trees also, the durable dogwood, redbud, and even some dwarf crepe myrtles to add some additional color on portions of the right-of-way. We will use a few shrubs. We will be removing some of the invasive Elaeagnus that's out there and replacing it with the primrose jasmine that already exists on the corridor to give us a nice buffer where we need it, but also nice color during the summer. Some cootie at some of the bridge approaches, and then even in the median, we're talking about a perennial peanut ground cover that will eliminate the need for our mowing crews to be out there in the median mowing. I mentioned to you that our landscape project is proceeding. We're actually at 90% plans, and our landscape architect has prepared this view for us. This is actually the view just to the west of Cascades Park, adjacent to the parking deck that is there at Gadsden Street and the parkway. But this is where we want to build on the bones of the existing oak trees, install some additional palm trees through that area as we approach the state capitol. This is what that view looks like now. This is what we think it might look like sometime in the future after planting. And if you have questions, I could try to answer those.
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you for the presentation. I can't remember what zone it was. I'm not sure if you're able to flip back to where you had those 4 different zones, but one of the things that I think I've noticed is in this maybe, I don't guess it's Capitol View, but wherever the commercial uses are, is that zone 2?
Zone 1.
Zone, okay.
Predominantly.
All right, zone 1. What appears to be a little bit more of cutting back of the trees that are there. I don't know if that's accidental or if it was just general maintenance, but describe a little bit what you mean by creating more, I guess, visibility for the commercial uses on the parkway.
The project became very visible, or I'll start over. There were some trees that were cut down without the department's knowledge that really brought this whole corridor and the maintenance of the corridor to light. That may be what you've seen there near the Comfort Inn.
Cut down by you all or by?
We're not certain who cut them.
Okay.
But it did provide lots of good visibility to some of the commercial properties along there. As a result of that, we did some additional clearing with our Department of Corrections crews to take out some of the invasive trees that are there, to give some corrective pruning to some of the heritage oaks that are along the corridor. And then we've even gone through and in front of the roadhouse, we've done some additional limbing up of some of the native shrubs that are there in order to provide a view underneath those shrubs. So that's what you've seen. That happened several months ago, I think back in the early spring. The city then has come and done some additional work in the medians to shorten or put a severe pruning or a hard pruning on the hollies that were in the median there in anticipation of this landscape project coming.
So could you describe, I mean, is that what you all want? I realize the trees before may have been accidentally or deliberately removed, but not by you all. Does the plan that you're describing now make that part of the plan to clear those?
We don't anticipate doing any additional clearing. There are some additional volunteer non-native species that are coming up that won't be desirable, that aren't good high-quality vegetation, and so those may come out as a part of the project. What will go back in are larger-sized trees, larger oaks, larger magnolias, but we're going to do it carefully so that we preserve views to those commercial business signs.
Any other questions?
Well, I mean,
Go ahead,
the only
I'm sorry.
thing I would say on that is, yeah, it is one of the most attractive, certainly was at one point, one of the more attractive entryways up to the Capitol. I can see where it got its, beautiful mile, I can't remember the terminology used, but one of Florida's most beautiful miles designations. And so I'm not sure if it's the replanting of even lower level trees that preserve some degree of signage for the commercial businesses off the service road, but I would just hate to see, as part of this implementation, expanded clearing in any way that I think disrupts the real native look of the parkway, at least in this 1 mile area.
Thank you. I agree, and we've actually adjusted from the concept phase to the final design phase. We've adjusted the number of trees and the location of trees so we don't have to remove as many trees. In fact, through that section, through that zone 1 and zone 2, there'll be a few trees removed in order to see a couple of existing magnolias in order to create some additional planting space for our longer lived species.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mayor, if you recall, the part of the arrangement here is for the city to pick up the maintenance responsibility on this once we do this. And so you'll be glad to know that when this first came up, we asked Gabe, well, what are we talking about here? And he said, about 20 to 40,000 a year. And we said, come work on that. So I think we're at a lower number. Is that correct, Gabe?
Yeah, one of the challenges with this project was primarily to come up with some beautify the corridor, but also keep it low maintenance. We did start with a much higher dollar figure, as you said, 20 to 40,000. We believe that the concept that we're coming up with now is going to put us somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 of annual maintenance costs.
Okay. Commissioner Miller.
First of all, thank you for all your work on this and the cooperation between the state and Public Works, because that's real important. This is obviously one of the most prominent sections of highway in town, just because of the fact that it leads right up to the Capitol, and it does come down over that bluff and makes such a nice view. I wanted to know a little more about your plans for the median, and the reason I'm asking this is that I know DOT has requirements that only certain trees can be planted in the median, and whether you were taking out trees that are already there, what are you taking out, that sort of thing. And the other thing, if you could share with all of us the timeline. I know Gabe has shared this, but share with everyone else the timeline as to when this work's going to be done.
Let me talk about the median first. There are a lot of existing crepe myrtles in the median that will remain. There are some that have been hit by cars that just will never be a viable tree. And so those trees will be thinned out a bit. They'll be pruned up and cared for by the city. So they're beautiful crepe myrtles along that corridor. But you're correct. We have certain design standards that prevent us from planting large trees in the median. And so that since our standards have changed over the years, we won't be planting any additional trees in the median. But I think that's all right. I think in order to preserve that view, that what we have is sufficient, and it will still provide lots of color and texture through that corridor. Your last question
Timeline.
About the timeline. Our plans will be complete this winter. I think I'm going to look to the back. I think December timeframe, and the project will be let to a contractor in June.
Commissioner, let me add a little bit to that as well. One of the reasons that we did postpone, or at least revise the plan so that we can get to a June letting, is because, as you know, there were rumors about the possible visit of the King and Queen. One of the things that you're going to see in the item, or that you have in the item tonight for approval, is a JPA with the DOT so that we can get started on some of the heavy clearing and that needs to occur, so to the tune of about $13,000, so that we can basically prepare the planters for this planting and facilitate that. Postponing this to the June timeframe was primarily due to the King and Queen. If they do come in with this work that we're doing now, it does give us the flexibility to possibly stage some plantings, some fresh plantings for their arrival. Because if we were to do this work now, it would have basically been stilted or staked trees, and the color would not be in time, and so on. So that was one of the reasons for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Ziffer.
Yeah, it's my understanding, and I can't remember where I heard this, but I don't think we're going to have that visit. That's the latest that I had heard. I have a question about the maintenance schedule, because we're doing the maintenance now, correct?
Yes, we entered into a maintenance agreement with DOT in June.
So a lot of the plantings along the parkway that were substantial, they weren't trees, but they were shrubs, and they were somewhere from 10, 12, 15 feet tall, had been cut down to maybe a foot. They've come back, and quite a few of them are now regaining some of their size. So by what standards are those going to be maintained? Because quite frankly, I was disappointed that in some cases those were cut all the way down to where they were. So I guess what I'm asking is, are those I'm not suggesting we have two different standards, but are we going to be on an ongoing basis cutting those down to the ground as they were this last cutting, or are we going to be maintaining them at some kind of height?
We will be maintaining them at some kind of height to honor what the different view corridors here are about. If in the commercial or in Zone 1, we will be maintaining them in a lower growth so that you can see the shopping areas. In other areas, we will be maintaining them much lower to the ground so that we can keep those corridors open, for example, Cascades Park.
Right. Okay.
Any other comments? We need an act. We need to take action.
We have to, don't we?
Yeah, approval.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. It passes unanimously. Next item, please.
The next item is 13.02.
Madam Manager,
yes.
Before you go, and I'm sorry, I wanted to go back and revisit my previous item. I mentioned that we were waiting on our esteemed chair to arrive, and I wanted to invite you forward real quickly, Martha, for any, we've already approved the item, so generally people don't talk to mess it up, but I'd love for you to offer any thoughts you have.
Members of the commission, thank you. I'm sorry I
just came in from San Francisco, and Delta is not always ready when I am. But I came here just to make sure you knew that I'm happy to participate in this, to chair it, and look forward to working with you and the members of the community as you do what I think is important for every community, is to periodically look at your rules, look at your procedures, make sure that they are appropriate for today's world, that they are easily understood by everyone, including the public. And if you need changes, the committee will recommend those to you, and we look forward to it. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, I will take my leave.
Coming in from San Francisco, Martha, you and Delta not doing what they should do on your behalf, we'll let you. Anybody got questions, comments? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing, and to say that we are so lucky in this community to have not only you, but the other members of this group. This community is so talented, and we have such a wonderful, deep resource of assets to call on, and the fact that you come forward and offer all of your expertise, this is quite a commitment, and I certainly appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. This is a wonderful community, and every member of this advisory panel is proud to be part of this community, so thank you.
Commissioner Mushin.
I was just going to say the same thing. We really appreciate it. You don't have to do this, but we're glad you are, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Barnett. Thank you so much. All right. Next item.
Next item is 13.02, discussion and approval of amendment to the purchase option agreement with the Florida Center for Performing Arts and Education. And Commissioners, at your October 24th meeting, you considered a request from the Florida Center for Performing Arts and Education to modify the current terms of the option agreement with the city regarding the purchase of the Johns Building located on Gaines Street as a site for the Performing Arts Center. The agreement required that they demonstrate that they had raised a minimum of $5 million for the Performing Arts Center by July 1st, 2012 to keep the option in place. They were not able to meet that requirement and petitioned the Commission to keep the option agreement in place until the project had the opportunity to be reviewed for possible funding through the extension of the local option sales tax. The Commission directed staff to bring back an amendment to the agreement which allowed for consideration of the project by the county-appointed sales tax committee, but also allowed for the city to entertain other purchase offers on the property in the interim. So the amended agreement would extend the option agreement through the sales tax project approval process, but also allow the city to consider other purchase options or offers on the property. That would also give the Performing Arts Group a right of first refusal if indeed that does occur. Michael Parker is here to answer any questions that you might have on this item, but I think it captures what you asked us to do from your October 24th meeting.
Commissioner Mustin.
Well, I'm going to support the item, but I'm a little concerned that the action that we took, or kind of the way it came out, gave a different impression from the one I wanted to give on this, which was, and I appreciate everything that the committee's doing, and particularly I think Commissioner Ziffer said this well at the last meeting, we need to change what we're doing here and need a whole different approach. But I don't want to leave the impression, at least from my standpoint, that we're kind of endorsing this as a sales tax project, because I'm definitely not. And so I don't want to kind of, and other commissioners may feel differently, but I continue to feel like, although I'd like to see this done, I'd like us to figure out a way to do it maybe on a scaled down basis. If it's the masthead of the sales tax extension, that is not a recipe for success. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that that was conveyed for whatever that's worth.
Commissioner Ziffer?
Yeah, I want to follow up on Commissioner Mustin's comment, because it was an impression I got. Somebody had approached me asking me if I was still supporting this, and I thought that was not the impression that I gave. The performing arts venue that was on the table is not anywhere near anything that I can support. And I thought we made ourselves pretty clear that, at least I did, and I know you did, and as did others, that we didn't see it as a part of, as it was presented, to move forward on the sales tax extension. But I will interject. Last week I had the opportunity to meet with, and I hope I don't get his name wrong here, but James Boudoin, who is the director of Asheville's Performing Arts Center. They had a situation there which is very similar to ours in that it was a very expensive project, and they were kind of stuck, and they came back with something significantly less, and now they've come back with something even less. And I know after having that discussion, because it was a very spirited discussion where I made myself extremely clear, where at least I was on this, I think they have come off from where they were. In fact, there was even some discussion of perhaps, a partnership with a private developer doing some things. They recognize that the money, as they had originally intended coming from the blueprint budget, is probably not going to happen. So I think they got the message, which is what they needed to get. But I will say, from an encouraging standpoint, I think they may have some options that would be of interest to us at a future date, and I think they're working hard at that.
Commissioner?
Well, I wanted to really second what Commissioner Zipper said in the sense that I really see this new direction. I think that the visit from Mr. Boudoin from Asheville was, I mean, here is this true professional who's done this in 6 or 7 cities in an affordable way, and they have come down to half the cost, and their cost started out at about what ours was. But they've really, he offered a lot of options for revenue generation that it never, I don't think that had been in the mix. We don't have a James Boudoin here to, hire. Unfortunately, we don't have the money, but we have Karen, and she's doing an excellent job. Anyway, the point is that there are pretty exciting efforts to try to reduce construction costs and to generate revenue. I think they're going to bring this forward to the sales tax committee when they present to them, and then it might give us a little bit different basis for discussion.
Okay, thank you. I think everybody is in agreement that the current scope of what this project at over $100 million is unacceptable as part of the sales tax extension, and we have to do something different in the future if we're going to have a performing arts center in this community. All right. Anything further on that?
Second.
Properly moved in second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
The next item is 13.03, discussion and approval of pension ordinance 12-0-38AA, proposed amendment to city pension ordinance as it relates to changes to general employees pension plan, and the city treasurer clerk will present this item.
Commissioners, as you recall at your last meeting, you discussed a number of possible changes to the pension plan for general employees, and you asked that we bring back a couple of pieces of additional information, including some financial impact that we needed to have, and we've done that. In your agenda item, there are 3 options presented. All 3 options include extending the general employees drop period from 3 years to 5 years. Option 1 provides a series of changes that you discussed, including changing the accrual rate for new employees to 2.15%. Option 2 would be identical to that set of changes, except that the accrual rate would remain at 2.25% for new employees as it is for current employees. The savings as a percentage of our payroll, which is the measure we've used through the police, fire, and general discussions, for option 1 would be 3.2% of payroll. We just got that information this week from the actuary. And then option 2 would have a savings of 2.7% of payroll. In both of those cases, the combination of factors is different than adding up. If you remember before, we had impact per item, and some of the items affect one another in terms of how long employees are expected to work and that sort of thing. So that in option 1, combined impact 3.2% of payroll, option 2, 2.7% of payroll, and then the third option that is listed there was the original recommendation that came to you in an agenda item, and that was a option that does not change the benefit structure at all, but changes the contribution level. That would have a 1.25% impact, but obviously, because it's a change of contribution level, the impact is whatever you would make the contribution level change. And with that,
Commissioners? Yeah, doesn't both options also offer the retirement by years of service?
yes, Commissioner, that was a significant change from the last meeting. We discussed some changes to the early retirement options, and both options 1 and 2 do include a years of service, so that in either of those options, employees under this new plan would be able to retire after 33 years of service for full retirement, and if they took early retirement, 33 years or age 65, and then early retirement would be 28 years of service or age 58. So what we've done is provided essentially 3 years of additional service, so that as employees are living longer, they'd work an additional 3 years to normal retirement or an additional 3 years to an early retirement.
Anybody else? I think it's helpful. We had a speaker earlier, and he expressed concern about the objective that we're seeking to achieve here. And I'm not quite sure if I understand the objective either. I have to be very honest with you. What exactly are we trying to do? Is it the bottom line here where it says annual savings as a percentage of payroll? Are we trying to enhance that or increase that? Or are we trying to, I'm not sure what we're trying to achieve. That's my concern. And if it is that, then there are things we can do other than the options 1 or 2 to achieve that goal. Go ahead.
Well, my intent has been all along on this to lessen the strain on the city taxpayer by having this defined benefit system. And we've talked at some length about this before, that, as people continue to live longer, and the whole kind of encouragement of a defined benefit pension system is retire, as soon as you can. Get out and get on the train. And so we can't, I don't think we're prepared in this community to move to a defined contribution system. But if we're going to have a defined benefit system, then I think, and the mayor, the League of Cities now has a whole newsletter and section on pensions, because it's such a major issue. And so I think that some of the strain that we've seen the last few years on city finances around the state and the country, when the market didn't produce what it's always produced, is that risk is out there for, on a going forward basis. So what I think we've tried to do here prudently is say, okay, well, for new employees coming in, we'd like you to work longer. We think that's better for the system. It puts less strain financially on the taxpayers potentially. We think that we can hire good people with some slight adjustment in benefits. And these, frankly, the adjustments are very, very modest. You need to work 33 years instead of 30 years to get to full retirement. I think in this day and age, that's not an unreasonable thing. But in answer to your question, I think the point of this was to try and kind of take a step back, said, look, the reason that our pension system is in as good a shape as it is today is because the people that were here before us made hard decisions. They didn't give away the farm when when times were good. And so I think we're, at least from my standpoint, trying to do the same thing in terms of, hey, let's kind of dial this back just a little bit and make it a little bit of hopefully a more a successful system for everybody.
Anybody else comments? Commissioner Muschin, I understand your explanation. I just want to make sure that the explanation is presented to our employees as to why we're doing this, and they've continued to express a desire to hear that explanation. And I think I would hope that they do understand what we're attempting to do here and what's being attempted here. And it does only impact new employees, new hires, and it does not impact the current employees. And I just wanted to have that on the record so the employees can see it. Commissioner Miller.
Well, the main thing I wanted to stress is that it does not affect our current employees, only in the sense that they will have the option for 2 more years of drop, which I think is a real important thing. That's the only way it affects current employees. So this is only for new employees. We're talking about making decisions that will have an impact years down the road. But if we're here to do our jobs to make sure we've got financial viability in the future, I think you have to start somewhere.
Let me ask a question. If the employees, I don't think they're going to want to do this, were to increase the number that related to annual savings as the Treasury Clerk has indicated, that would be the annual savings. For instance, if they wanted to go to 2.25% annual savings, what happens under those circumstances?
I'm not following what you're saying.
I think if
you're backing into the number of savings, and
no, I'll just say that wasn't in the 2 previous cases. We ended up backing into the savings. Part of what I felt as our motivation and charge around this reform was to do something structurally to the system. The truth is you can, from contract to contract, year to year, change an employee's contribution rate. Sure. That didn't have to, we in essence did very little, frankly, by doing that. And I hope at some point we'll have the opportunity to go back and redress it in the bargaining units. But for the general employees, future general employees, what we would be doing is structurally shifting the system so, as is indicated in the agenda item, we expand drop. We push retirement by years of service as well as age out by 3 years, which I should say is still short of what Social Security is. And also where Social Security is headed, and I think is probably a little bit on par with where where a lot of the private sector is. But I think Commissioner Mushin is right in wanting to say that we've had people who are good stewards of this system, which is why we can boast about where we are right now and our standing. And I think we want to, 50 years down the line, for a government who sits here to say prudent decisions were made about the structure of this plan, and we're still sitting good with regard to our recruitment, with regard to its level of fairness to all employees within the government, and obviously with regard to its cost control. Again, my only differentiation from the 3 options I think that we have tonight, and I do know my colleague Commissioner Mushin has a difference of opinion, is on the accrual. I am closer to keeping the accrual rate where it previously was, which is 2 1/4, and I believe that's option 2.
Correct.
And option 1 is accrual at 2 1/5.
2.15. Yeah, 2.15.
But that the 3 years to retire, the addition of 3 years by age as well as 3 years by years of service, I think is consistent throughout the recommendations. And obviously, option 3 is not doing any structural change and just asking the employees to shoulder more of the contribution. And does that mean current employees or just future?
That would be just for future employees.
Right, and I think with police and fire, it was current.
With
they began to absorb it and spread it amongst current.
Well, what happened was with police, it's for new employees only. Right. For fire, they chose to spread it among all employees by accommodating a smaller amount each year until such time as the entire group is paying the higher rate.
I guess my question was, Commissioner Mushin, what if the employees were willing to contribute more to the plan as it is now? Does that solve anything?
Well, no, for the reasons Commissioner Gillum just indicated. I mean, it doesn't go very far to what we were trying to do, which was set up a separate structure. And the contribution is a factor of, a whole bunch of factors, and it's looked at pretty much every year, I think, on the city's basis, where if we set the structure, the thought was not to be messing with the structure very often. This is it. We're going to do it one time. This is kind of the deal you come in on. You understand when you come in, this is the deal. And so that was more the thinking there. So I mean, what we did, and Commissioner Gillum is correct on this, what we did with fire and police was way watered down, in my view, what we really set out to accomplish. So I really hope that we don't do that here. So I would move option one, Mayor. And
Second.
I understand or hear where Commissioner Gillum's coming from on the rate, but I just kind of feel like, I mean, 2.15, and all of this is sort of a, we're not really trying to get to a savings number. We're just trying to have a reasonable program, but that is less, less strain if things don't go as well. And so I just feel like that's not an unreasonable, very minor adjustment in terms of doing that.
And I'll just say, in defense of the savings even going with option two is 2.7% of payroll. And my rationale for that is frankly to acknowledge that we did do something different with police and fire. I wasn't happy when we walked away from that, and so, but we are where we are. And I think to compensate for the impact of these two different plans, and they are for the bargaining unit different than that, because for the general employee, because of the fact we took a structural approach with them versus a cost savings approach, which was done with the bargaining unit, is that I don't want to see us get the bargaining unit and the general employees too out of whack from where their plans are. They've made the argument, and I think rather successfully, that even though they have not been the general employees have not been organized under a bargaining unit, that the changes or accommodations we've made for the bargaining units, the general employees have generally sort of dovetailed with some variation the same structure of plan. Here we are making a clear difference between those two plans, and the difference between what Commissioner Mushin and I are arguing is a difference of 3.2% savings in his recommendation, and 2.7% in mine, with the exception that I do think that it at least tries to keep whole between the bargaining unit and the general employee a piece, and that accrual piece is one of them.
I can tell you that what persuades me more than anything else are the structural changes, and that is we are living longer, and people are working and can work longer, and those structural changes in terms of age to retire and how many years you must work to retire, I think that's appropriate. The other parts of it I struggled with, I have to tell you, but I believe we do have to make some changes in order to preserve what has happened in the past. And we do have a well-funded, well-determined system, but I just want to make sure that our employees understand exactly what's going on, and we owe them that explanation as to what we are doing or trying to do and why we are trying to do it. So that's persuasive to me. But we have a motion on option one and a second. And I got to ask all in favor of option one, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have another motion?
Move option two.
Second.
Option two is properly moved and second. All in favor of option two, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
It passes. Option two passes 3-2. Okay. All right, next item.
The next item is item number 13.04, approval of 2012 Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 grant application, job access and reverse commute, and New Freedom Program. And Commissioner Star Metro, as the designated recipient of Federal Transit Administration funding for the Capital Region overall, which is Gadsden, Jefferson, Leon, and Wakulla counties, is seeking approval to apply for, execute, and administer funding from the 2012 Section 5316 Job Access and Reverse Commute Grant and the 2012 Section 5317 New Freedom Program Grant. The funding for these grants will be used to meet increasing demand for transportation by citizens who are low-income, disabled, and elderly, as well as the general public within the capital region. Brian Waterman is here to answer any questions that you might have on this item.
Questions? You want any presentation?
I'll move the item, Mayor.
Second.
Properly moved and second, Brian. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item.
Next item is 13.05, approval to negotiate and execute grant agreement S0614 with FDEP for the Upper Lake Lafayette Nutrient Reduction Facility Project. And Commissioner, this item seeks authorization to negotiate and execute a grant agreement with DEP for a $500,000 grant to partially fund construction of a new stormwater treatment facility at Weems Pond. This facility, which is upstream of Lake Lafayette, will use similar technology as is used at Lake Ella. That is, the addition of a chemical flocculant. Did I say that right, Commissioner Miller?
Did.
Okay. Aluminum hydroxide, or alum, to settle out pollutants. The $6.1 million project, formerly titled Upper Lake Lafayette Nutrient Reduction Facility, is much larger and has a greater treatment capacity than does Lake Ella. It's being implemented as part of the city's stormwater pollution reduction program, and construction was funded by the Commission as part of a prior capital project.
Questions?
Just want to make a comment. You know, you mentioned Lake Ella, and we can all think about how far Lake Ella is from Lake Lafayette, and that is basically the upper reach of that Lafayette Basin. The Lafayette Basin drains a tremendous amount of the city, and there's a lot of water coming off a lot of lawns and all into that system, so I'm very glad to see this happening.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
Next item is 13.06, discussion of agreements with Leon County School Board, the American Red Cross, Tallahassee's Girls Choir, and funding for youth services at the Walker Ford Community Center. Commissioners, this agenda item proposes agreements with several organizations to continue needed services within the community, and also to provide funding to expand youth crime prevention programming at the Walker Ford Center. The action will provide funding for the Red Cross to provide emergency shelter and support for city residents. As you know, their funding was reduced significantly through the CHSP process this year, and Red Cross executives and board members are very, very concerned with all of the issues that we've already had out there, that they really are not adequately funded to move forward. The partnership with the Leon County School Board is for the Tallahassee Boys Choir and would provide resources and technical assistance to the Girls Choir of Tallahassee, and also expand youth crime prevention programs at the Walker Ford Center. I think Michael Parker is here. There he is.
Questions?
Move approval. Answer any questions.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Next item.
Next item is 13.07, discussion of decentralized route structure, update, and approval of 2011 annual report. And Commissioners, just over a year ago, the City of Tallahassee redesigned the transit system, changing the focus from a downtown-oriented hub-and-spoke model to a crosstown decentralized system with many options. The system change was a long time in development, with a history going back to 2005, where a decentralized system was first studied by Florida State University students. The process officially kicked off in 2009 and has been 2 years from design to implementation. What we indicated to you that we would do after we did the initial kickoff was to come back to you with an update on where we are, and that's what we would like to do today. Let me ask Ron Garrison if he would come forward. We also have one or two consultants who have been with us through this process, and they would also like to present part of this item. Ron.
Mayor, Commissioners, Madam Manager, and City officials, we thank you for this opportunity. You'll notice there in front of you one of the very first electric buses in the country. I wanted to share that with you. More on that a little bit later. What we wanted to do is come back to you and answer your questions and show you the plan that we promised to bring back to you. We're not asking for a decision tonight on the plan, just any comments that you might have, and then we'll take that and bring it back to you again at a workshop to get additional input. But what we'd like to do tonight is talk about the options and get some guidance from you. As part of this, we'll talk about the commission vision and objectives that we initially went through. We'll go through the current progress as to where we are. We'll also talk about where Star Metro is today, okay? And we'd like to share very briefly with you some potential investment opportunities and some funding discussion. The lion's share of, I think, what we want to share is what are the investment opportunities for the future, and then obviously next steps and questions. There's several things that the Commission asked us to do. One was to reduce downtown trips, and we successfully were able to accomplish that. Another was to reduce redundancy, because there was a lot of redundancy in this system. A big one was to improve on-time performance. And as you know, the old system had about 50% or less on-time performance when I got here. We were able to get it up to about 62%. And under the new system, it's currently at about 83, 84%, and it's continuing to improve. So we are looking at improving the bus frequency from about 51 minutes to 33 minutes. We've reduced travel time. Under the current system, travel time decreased for over 56% of our customers. And there's about 29% of the customers, the trips are about the same, and about 15% are a little bit longer. The average bus frequency, how often a bus comes by, was 51 minutes under the old system and is 33 minutes under the new system. The last thing that you asked us to do was to improve regional travel. Well, under the decentralized system, for the first time, we've laid the groundwork that we can have regional travel. People can come in, park their car, and then take Star Metro to where they want to go instead of having to go all the way downtown and then back out again. So we were able to complete all of those successfully. Ridership was expected to decrease about 8 or 9%, and that's because every trip had to transfer. And under the Federal Transit Administration, every trip that transferred, which is all of them at CK Steel, counted as another trip. Now, everyone doesn't have to transfer. So we expected ridership to grow, but the numbers to go down because we wouldn't be counting all those transfers. And instead, ridership is up 1%. So that is very, very good news. Also, the other thing that has gone down considerably is the number of transfers overall, which means there's a lot more one-seat rides to where we're going. In the next slide, you see real briefly that we have 12 crosstown routes and 6 routes at CK Steel. You know, the average frequency, and below how the sidewalk coverage increased and the number of stops went down. We are looking to double the number of shelters, but we've gone from 85 to 137, and that's with less stops. The transfer location's gone from 1 to 43, and we're continuing to increase the number of pedestrian audible signals throughout the entire system.
But Ron, go back about the sidewalk thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you told me today that is a measure that's not commonly used in the industry, but we're using it.
Thank you, Mayor. You're absolutely right. It's a big deal that we've gone from 74 to 91%, and so we called around all over the country, and Gabe called all over the country. Nobody else measures that, so they didn't even know what their sidewalk coverage ratio was to their bus stops. So this is a considerable improvement for our customers, and we have plans to improve it even further.
Then speak about the difference between 91 and getting to 100 and how we can do that and what's happening there.
We'll actually cover that just a little bit later on.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But that's a very good question, Mayor. We talked here about the Star stops with Star Metro compared to RTS, and yet our percentage of shelters per stops is about the same. And it was higher until we added additional stops when we improved some of the routes. Today, Star Metro has 67 buses, and we have 3 electric buses with 2 on the way. What's significant about that is when we get the 2 additional buses, we'll have the largest electric bus fleet in the world. And we're pretty proud of that, and that's right here in Tallahassee. We have one hybrid bus that we got free and from the Department of Transportation. We have with us today a consultant from Wendell, and that gentleman is Jim McGoughlin. If you would stand up, sir. I'm going to talk briefly about what he did for us, but he'll be here at the end of the presentation if you would like to ask any questions. But basically, what we wanted to do is, did we do the right thing? Okay, and there are a number of questions that they asked, and they did a thorough analysis, and the overall grade was an A-. And we got an A- basically because they said, you know, if you would have had all the shelters in or all the sidewalks in, and if you could have made the routes more frequent, we would have given you an A. So I thought we did pretty good. But basically, you know, was this the right thing for our community? And they said absolutely. This was an effective way long-term to improve the service. And without doing this, it would make it, we would no longer be able to sustain future improvements because it wouldn't be cost-effective. How did Star Metro compare to other systems? The planning was thought out very well and well implemented. How was it implemented compared to large-scale systems? They thought that we were very proactive and very innovative in some of the things that we did, you know, with our ambassadors and how we reached out to the public with over 100 meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And we already talked about what we could do differently, improve headways on key routes, and more pedestrian improvements. What can Star Metro do to improve the system moving forward? And just, you know, work to improve the route structure and improve the overall system. And very briefly, I'd like to introduce you from our gentleman from the Renaissance Planning Group, Mr. Kevin Fisher. He's going to very quickly go over the customer service survey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So back in April, we conducted a two-day survey effort of each of the routes, and basic questions were to get at, first determine who was using the system for more than a year, who were newer riders, to get a breakdown of people that had used the system longer, could see the changes, did they think it was good, negative. So like I said, we were looking at the general habits, preferences of the riders, how frequently they use the system. Try to keep it brief. So we did it on all 12 routes, and we wanted to make sure we had each time frame covered for each route, so peak hour, midday for each of the routes. Over 600 surveys were undertaken those 2 days. On the buses that had a small number of riders at the time, each rider was approached, and then buses that were full, we did a skip method so that it wasn't targeting certain people, it was just every other row. 69% of the respondents said they had been using the service for more than a year, and just under a third less than 1 year. Of those longer-term riders, 47% had said that the structural changes had improved their perception of the system, compared to 36% who had said it had not improved, and the remaining 16% said it was about the same, or they did not know. The main reasons that those who said the system had improved of the longer-term riders was shorter walking distance to their bus stop, followed by service is more direct, service is more frequent, travel time is shorter. I don't know if you can read those percentages, but the first one, the distance to the bus stop was 32%, compared down to the travel time is shorter at 18%. Transfers are easier or more convenient was at 17%. And then of those new riders, which we define as less than 1 year, we asked them if they were encouraged to start using the system because of the changes. Approximately just under 1/3 said it did encourage them. Just over 40% said it didn't encourage them, and about 1/4 said it had no effect on their decision.
Can you go back to that slide
Sure.
real quick? Sorry.
Yes.
So 42% of the new riders, the decentralized system wasn't part of their decision.
Exactly. Some were because they had just moved to Tallahassee and they were going to use the system anyway. So there's a broad reason why they
don't know the difference.
would not necessarily have been, that change encouraged them to use it. Many of them, the newer riders, didn't even know that,
There was a change.
that it just started, that there was a system change.
Okay.
And then of those that did say, so that that third of new riders that said it did encourage them, the most common response was shorter walking distance, similar to the long-term riders. Service is more direct, followed by service is more frequent. Then travel time is shorter. And okay. So among all customers looking at long-term, short-term, like I said, the shorter walking distance was the most common response that we received, followed by services more direct. That's at just over a quarter of the responses.
Question.
Yes.
For those who rated that the system had not improved or
right.
For them, did they offer a reason? Because anecdotally, I kept hearing, I have to walk too far from my house, but it's ranked as the #1 plus, is that the distances are shorter. Do you have a sense of?
Yes, actually, for those that said no, that walk distance was longer. So the people that liked it, their most common response was that their walking distance was shortened. Of those that did not like the change of the long-term riders, an increased walking distance was the #1 response. It was 34%. So in summary, and if any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer, but in summary, the largest percentage of customers believe the route changes have improved service. Again, that's that, looking at that 47% versus 36%. There were some customers that said it was about the same to them, had no influence on their perception of the system. So yeah, if you have any additional questions.
Questions, Commissioner?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is for you or for Mr. Garrison, but I'm trying to synthesize these responses to make some sense of it and sort of where you go from here, especially given the comment around the distances being its greatest plus, but also its greatest deficit. What changes, where do you go from here with regard to system improvement? Particularly for those riders who were previous riders who reflected no improved experience or a worse experience.
Do you want to take that?
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. What we found is that that's changing, Commissioner. Many of the customers were not using the system correctly. In addition to that, this was done in the spring. We've had 2 service changes since then, so that's improved. The last listening sessions that we had, the customers are saying that they like the system even better. So what the consultant told us is that's something we need to continue to work on. What's kind of interesting about this is that we checked, and I couldn't find a single transit agency that had ever done a customer survey after a major change. And I know why. I asked them anyway, and it's because after a major change, they're very, very negative. You're not going to get any positive results. And the consultant told us that, you know, these were very good results considering we just went through a major change. So succinctly, in answer to your question, it's something we need to continue to work on, something we can improve upon.
Question?
Walking distances.
Commissioner Ziffer.
Yeah, the connections have me confused. So we increased our transfer points from basically CK Steel, which was 1 transfer point, to now 42.
43, yes.
43. But we don't have people transferring. I mean, you basically said a lot more people no longer have to transfer. I'm confused.
We have, no, that's really good, because it doesn't make sense. We have 43 transfer points. We had 1 before.
Right.
But any place that you went other than downtown, you had to transfer every single time. Okay? Now our routes go to different places. So even though we have more transfer points, many times you have a 1-seat ride not requiring you to transfer. So our transfers have actually been reduced.
Okay.
But you got the points, the opportunity to transfer.
Yes.
If you want to. That's the way this is I grew up in Miami. And we had bus system down there that was really significant. This is the way it worked. There was no central system at all.
Right.
Hub and spoke system that we had before. You just had, you knew the routes, and when you knew the routes, you transferred from one to the other, and I had to do it quite often.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. We create a decentralized system, so I know we can get people to places directly, but we want to encourage them to transfer. So let's say you want to get across town, now you have to transfer, correct, for the most part? But based upon what you're telling me, most people aren't even trying to do that. They're just going to stick with whatever these easy routes are.
In many cases, yes, you're right. But in other cases, if you look at the route system, our routes are pretty long. So if you're going, if I'm planning a trip, and I'm fortunate enough that I can take just one route, that's what I'm going to do. But if I'm doing shopping or doctor or other things, then I'm going to end up transferring because I'm going to different places.
Right, which is the complaint I hear because, so you have a headway which is too long waiting for your first bus, and then when you transfer, you got to wait again. So in order to basically, the route, one of my routes that I took was with a nurse that worked at Capital Regional, and for her to get to where she lived was just a really long time because the transfer point, I think, was in addition to waiting for the initial bus, then we had to go to the transfer point and wait again. I guess what I'm getting at, and maybe this is going to be presented, is I think one of the reasons we don't have as many complaints is because people are just accepting of it. They're just, this is the system and this is what it is. And so what do we do to make and bring down those headways and the weight people have when they do transfer? Because I'm concerned that one of the major, and I'm sorry for jumping around here, one of the major goals in this is to get people that normally wouldn't take the bus to start to use it. And I see that our ridership up, that also corresponds with the fact that when gas prices went way up, are we getting people to use our bus system that in the past didn't have to?
I would say yes, and that's more anecdotal and talking to customers, and I'll give you a couple examples. When we have our listening sessions, we find that out. When they did the survey, as he shared with you, about a third of the customers using the service were new. And they concentrated that survey on non-students. Now, if students were involved, I would say, well, then you don't have hardly any new customers. But it was non-students, so, that's significant. The other thing is that when we go out and ride the service, which we started doing several months ago, all of us, especially our supervisors, because our supervisors, even when we wear our red shirts, they don't always know we're in Star Metro, so we might do something different. But our supervisors have that big white shirt on and the badge, and they love that because they know it's a supervisor, and then they can talk to them. So we're getting that feedback from our supervisors and our operators also. So a specific answer to your question, the actual number, I don't know, but talking to customers, listening sessions, us riding the bus, and the survey, those indicators along with the ridership indicate to us that our ridership is going up not only because the service is working better for a lot of folks, but that it works better for customers that haven't used the service before.
Ron, go back to the original, I think, where Commissioner Ziffer was starting, and he might have gone down the line a little bit.
I apologize.
But I think part of the question is, what plan do we have for the future that will continue to look at improvements and decrease headways and that kind of thing? What are we looking at in the future? What can people expect from us?
We talked some about that later on in the plan, but we're doing a number of things. One, we do the listening sessions. Two, we ride the bus and we talk to the listening sessions are going out and talking to the customers, the public meetings, and getting input from them. Two, we're now going out and actually talking to the customers on the buses, and that's all of the employees, and we collect all of that data. 2 to 3 times a year, we actually take all this information along with our operators who talk to our customers, and we make improvements to the system. The last 2 major changes we made were significant. We're getting many, many more compliments now that it's working better. But that's something, we just made this change. That's something that will continue to improve, over the next 18 months.
Okay. Do we have, how do we handle, because this was a complaint that I got, and it's been some time, maps available on our buses so that people that don't have the use of handheld devices or digital devices, they can find out where the different routes are? Do we have maps on the buses?
We do a couple things, Commissioner. We've increased the locations where we have those available from 2 to 7. So we have it at 5 additional recreational locations working with Parks and Rec, at CK Steel, and at Appleyard. In addition to that, we put them on the buses for the first several weeks, for the first week before we make a change, for the first several weeks after we make a change, that they're available to customers.
Well, why wouldn't we continue to have maps on the buses for new customers? How would they know?
They typically ask an operator, and we get one in their hands. But we haven't done it in the past, but it might be something that we look at in the future.
Well, I'm just thinking, if I got on the bus for the first time, how would I know if I didn't have this? Which, I mean, I'm assuming that we do have bus riders that don't have that technology.
Well, we have also have them at the universities, at housing centers, at different public areas, at the 5 locations we talked about.
I know, but I mean, you know, as a marketing person, you typically have something at the point of sale, and the point of sale is on the bus. And so I think it would be helpful and not confusing for people. And we don't have to have too many, but maybe the driver can have some, so if somebody needs a map, it's easy enough for them to pull out. Some people, like my wife, she likes a map. But I know we have new customers. We want to encourage new customers. And when they get on our buses, they have no idea where to get off. They don't know what routes they should take. So
a lot of times they ask the operators, but yeah, we'll look into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
They're trying to change, they're going to change that. Yes.
What you have undertaken, you and your team have undertaken, is a huge, huge task. That's probably one of the biggest transformations the government has done. Maybe since its logo, except you got much more customer contact with it, where they can rate good, bad, or experience in between. So, I don't want to underestimate the hugeness of the task. The other thing I think we probably were a little and not straightforward about was that we could do all of this, improve the service, and keep the budget the same.
Right.
Which is why we ask that you bring back recommendations that help us bring it to scale, and I know you've got that coming. So I think in the short term, at least the areas I think we probably could put some emphasis short of new money is, you identified earlier, much of the experience that customers have where their routes are, or the time and their routes are extended, is because they may not be mapping their routes appropriately. The quickest, easiest route to get where it is that they're going. And so I would really urge us to be creative about how it is we're ramping up the usage of not only the digital tools on your smart devices, but also the trip planner, which you can do at home or in the library, and then spending, of course, more time where possible in helping people, if it's a normal, regular route, helping people map those so that folks get a little bit more clarity in that, and make sure that they're guaranteed that they're taking the shorter possible routes. Earlier on, when we did the initial transition over, you had ambassadors helping people figure that out. And I'm wondering if, at some point we may want to rebirth that now that the system has kind of settled a little bit, to make sure folks are in fact mapping their routes appropriately. And again, these are not huge improvements, but it is probably the most consistent complaint I ever hear, is the walking and the length of the route. And I always say, did you try the trip planner? Did you do all these other things? And sometimes oftentimes the answer to that is no, or I asked somebody, and so on and so forth. So it seems to me that's a low-hanging fruit that we can do, short of the real improvements that we're going to have to make, which are going to have a pretty large, I think, financial price tag attached to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner.
Just real quickly, do we have any idea what happened? Did our ridership go up at all yesterday with the offer we had for the taking the bus to the polls? Do we know?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
I would have to say yes.
Yeah, I
Intuitively, this is what I saw.
I have this question too. What happened yesterday? And so
When will we be able to get that information?
Usually it takes a couple of weeks, but we can pull it and try and get sooner. And the reason for that is the buses wirelessly download the information into our server. And if there's a problem with the bus, it might take 3 or 4 days longer. And I don't want to get technical, but we'll expedite it and get it to you as soon as we can.
The reason I ask is we gave people a reason to vote, but also we gave them an opportunity to ride the bus for free. And if ridership went up, we may look in the future other opportunities where we have a singular day that does something that encourages people to take the bus, because our whole idea here is to get people to use the bus that normally wouldn't for whatever reason. So I am interested in what those numbers are, and particularly where those numbers came from.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Which bus routes?
I would, the only caution I would make to that is, I think one of the benefits and one of the assumptions I made about the free ridership is that for people who would normally anticipate it costing them X amount to get to work and X amount to get home, or X amount to do an errand and X amount to get back home, that you've now built in the added opportunity for them to expand their trip at no cost to themselves. Right. And so what you may experience are these are normal, regular riders who decided to add either going to vote or stopping by their polling place as part of it. But the numbers will tell us one way or another, but that's one assumption I would have. I did take a picture of a gentleman. I was standing at the polls yesterday, and he said he had heard about the fare free on the radio. He had a bum leg and said that he wasn't sure, it's an older gentleman, how he was going to vote. But he heard about it, and so he jumped on the bus and made it to Jack McLean to vote. And I said, will you take a picture of me? I got to show it to my colleagues that at least one somebody used it. But I look forward to the actual numbers coming back.
But what I think, and we're probably going to see a little bit of this later, is we have to begin to take advantage of the technology that's out there in terms of how we can make the bus experience more palatable and more attractive to our end users. Realizing that not everybody in our community can have the latest in technology, maybe everybody can't, but there are things that I believe that we can do on the buses that doesn't require people to have smartphones or whatever to make them more attractive to the riders. And that's what we need to look at, in my opinion. I think we need to take advantage of the grid system that we've put in place. Now, you and I had this discussion earlier, and how that can be integrated into the bus program, your transit program, and can it be valuable, especially when we're getting these electric buses. Does that offer an opportunity for us to take advantage of our smart grid technology that we have here? I don't know, but I think we need to start thinking innovatively, if you will, about what we have in this community and how we can make that experience on the bus more attractive. I mean, you mentioned something about, we talked something about where we'd have each stop being announced before they get there, so people will know exactly what's happening. All this is new, and I think if we start and begin to think outside the box about what we have and the technological advances that are out there, we can really make this a win-win for everybody. And that's, I know you're going to talk a little bit about that later, but we need to do that. Yes. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So
You're about finished, right?
I'm about done and going to turn over to Brian. Real quickly, we wanted to look at it through the customer's eyes. So what is important to the customer before the trip, walking to the Star Stop, at the Star Stop, and coming up with a standard for that, and on the bus, and then after the trip. So, real quickly, we hired a mobility coordinator that helps the customer before the trip. We'll ride the bus with them. We'll talk to them on the phone. We'll meet with them. And she got an award for being the best, in the country. We're going to have a website. We already have a booklet for folks. We have a 1-800 number. We have the online trip planner. Soon that'll be available on mobile phones and on the tablet. And we're going to do focus groups to make it more user-friendly. I talked about the regional helpline. The new ride guide design the customers really like a lot better, and then the large print braille guides that our customers use. In addition to that, we're one of the few that have the next to text. So if you're at a stop, you can text in, it'll tell you when your bus is going to be there. You know, and whoa, go to Burger King and get 10% off. Or we can tell them, you know, that your bus is running late because of an accident or some of those kinds of things. Some of the projects to be completed next year are the mobile trip planning. Like I said, that'll be up pretty soon in the next few months. Real-time information about where the bus is. You can see it on your phone, on the tablet, on the web, and real-time next to text. Right now it tells you schedule time. Very soon it'll tell you the time in real time. And also value-added and additional fare media for our customers to make it more convenient for them to use the service. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brian Waterman to quickly go through some of the options that we have available.
Again, good evening, Commissioners. Brian Waterman, the Transit Planning Manager. I'll be pretty brief as I go through this. As the Mayor alluded to earlier, part of the experience is the pedestrian experience to the sidewalk. Right now, we're at 91% coverage with the new route structure. Our goal is to complete 100% coverage of city streets along our routes. By doing that, that'll get us to 93% coverage along all of our routes, where every single route in the system will have a sidewalk on at least one side of the street, in some cases 2 sides of the street. That only requires about 5 miles of additional sidewalks. The remaining 7% are sidewalks along county and state roads. We're not asking for city funding to do those, but we are working with our county and state counterparts to say, what can we do to include sidewalks in the projects so we have additional coverage. An example of this is upcoming sidewalk work on Orange Avenue, which will increase coverage. The moderate investments, which I'm going to show you on the next page, in major investments, it looks at what's encouraged connections between routes. Where are there roads that provide connections from your neighborhood to one or more routes? At the moderate level, these are roads like Ridgeview and Trimble. At the major level, this is roads like Piedmont and Cactus. Briefly, the map on the left shows the remaining segments along city streets. Red is what we would need to complete out on the minor investment. The gold are the additional stuff of the county and state roads. On the right, the blue is the moderate investment. You can see Trimble, you can see Richview over there, and then the red are other streets that are there. We broke this up on those categories based off of residential density and retail activity, with the higher priority focus on the moderate streets. Briefly, here is the funding levels for each of those options. On the audible signals, that's where the idea of the burpers and chirpers at the intersections. Prior to launch, we were able to add more signals to the system. Our goal is to continue to add to the system. We worked with Lighthouse of the Big Bend to prioritize 30 different intersections. The minor option would work on their top priority, which is 6 remaining intersections. The moderate investment is their categories 3, 4, and 5, and then the 30 is all of their intersections. Some of this we can do ourselves through existing grants and funding we have access to and through partnerships with Public Works. Moving on at the bus stop, we generally have 3 categories of star stops. We have the neighborhood level, and really the neighborhood level is that stop in the ground. Now, we want to go above and beyond what we have right now and focus really on that customer experience, not ridership. What's the experience at the bus stops? Instead of having just a stop in the ground, we want to upgrade that and have the boarding and lighting areas, a 5x8 concrete pad to provide a firm, stable surface for people to wait on, adding leaning rails at these bus stops or a bench to provide some sort of rest for them, and then a trash receptacle as well. At the enhanced level for the category 1 stop, canopies, coverings, provide some protection from the elements, regardless of ridership, that we have something there when they wait for that initial boarding onto the bus. Our next level of bus stops or superstar stops is the generator. These are our transfer points. These are locations where there's lots of people who get on or make transfers, retail establishments. Our goal on the minor level is to add 30 more shelters to our system in addition to what we do right now to get all of our transfer points covered with a shelter. The enhanced option, the moderate investment, is to go to this large shelter you see. You've seen places in the road where one shelter is just not enough. We've got so much demand there, we want to add a larger shelter to provide the coverings they need. The last level of our last category of star stops is the super stops and regional. You saw this briefly in the sales tax presentation. The minor investment option calls for doing the 3 super stops. At areas where 3 or more routes intersect. The goal here is to provide amenities for them, information kiosks, restrooms, again, Wi-Fi, waiting areas, and of course, the major investment. Moderate investment is to look at CK Steel Plaza again and do something interim prior to a sales tax project. Again, the costs are here on both those options and what's detailed. It's a little bit different than what's in your presentation. We had some revisions earlier. The next step in your journey is the on-the-bus experience. And we broke this up into two areas. What is your experience actually on the bus? And the second part is what's about frequency improvements. These are all just minor investments that we can do pretty easily. One is to add the automatic stop announcements the mayor alluded to earlier. We have the quote here for $600,000 is from Trapeze, who we have a contract with for the scheduling software, but we're in negotiations right now with possibly doing this through Transit TV where the cost will be much lower and possibly funded through an advertising program. In addition to that, adding free Wi-Fi on all of our buses. We're working with a vendor on this as well to cover some or all of the operating and capital costs through advertising sales on the splash page. Now, the bulk of this conversation is really the frequency improvements. And I'm going to brief with this thing. We have three levels of options here. The minor option uses two buses we already have in the lot and put them back into service. For $330,000 plus or minus, we can put a bus on the Forest route to bring that down from its current 30 minutes to 20-minute frequency, and a bus on the Big Bend route bringing it down from 40-minute to 30-minute frequency. Why these two routes? These two routes are emerging routes of great demand. Big Bend is a big mover from the south side going all the way up to Tallahassee Mall into Huntington Oaks, covering a lot of territory, picking up a lot of people in a very popular system, and meets at CK Steel Plaza. Likewise, Forest comes from Huntington Oaks by TCC, a big generator for us, and then on its way to the plaza, going by the Saley property, College Town, and those other properties. When they come online, they'll be using this Forest route. So this minor option recognizes that, and it says, let's put those two buses back into service. The moderate and major investments require the purchase of expansion buses, and possibly looking at some rehab or relocation of our existing facility at Appleyard to handle these additional buses. That's where the cost is coming in. Under the moderate investments, it requires 5 new buses to be purchased. On the major investment, it's 9 new buses, as well as looking at flex routing to provide service in unincorporated Leon County to kind of feed them into the system. The last area of the trip is the after the trip experience. How are we maintaining a communication with our customers? How are we getting the pulse of how they feel and what more they want? There are really 2 levels of options of investment here. One option is just a minor. We do a customer satisfaction survey every 2 years. We have the benchmark from this past survey, and on a regular basis, we go out, hire a consultant, and we do another customer satisfaction survey. That survey results are then presented to you and use our strategic planning for the future. For $90,000, we do surveys more often, and we do targeted surveys looking at fares, communication, perception, amenities. In addition to that, we establish a customer loyalty program, similar to what you see at restaurants or food trucks where you get a little coupon or something, just something to kind of reward them for riding the bus in addition to what we can do right now. And lastly, to develop a customer database to track our customers more thoroughly than we do right now, that we can do the appropriate follow-up with them and make sure that their concerns are addressed. I went that through pretty quickly, and I'm just going to wrap up on the last 2 slides, and that's a brief discussion on funding options. These are just ideas we threw out there that we can come back with later more detail on. One is a service agreements, renegotiating them with existing agreements, doing new service agreements with the state, school board, and other parties. Looking at the parking fee structure. Some agencies, use their parking fees to support transit. We can certainly look at that. Of course, we do provide limited service to Leon County, and there are calls for more service to other jurisdictions outside the Star Metro service area. We need to look at increasing the contribution from them. Something new is a Transportation Deficiency Fund. It's almost like, it's basically a TIF, but for transportation projects. This can be certainly looked at. Mobility fee, the target issue had a discussion on this last week about doing a mobility fee to replace concurrency money to help fund transit operations. And lastly, this is something I discovered through some research, is special assessment districts. As part of the Citizens in Place initiatives, if Midtown or the like want additional service beyond what they're getting right now, they can do a special assessment, and that assessment can be used to fund transit options in those areas. And that's pretty much it. And here's the entire list of options presented. I'll turn it back over to Ron to field questions.
Questions, comments? Commissioners? Is there anything further?
Commissioners, one of the things I'd like to point out, I think Ron said this earlier, is that this is a lot of information. It was received by you very late, and the option, of course, is to designate a time when we could actually sit down. I think this is a workshop type discussion, and we could put that on the calendar for the future if you would like to do that.
Yes, would like to do that. I think it is a
Looks
lot
like,
to absorb.
was that your concern, Commissioner Ziffer? You look like that might give you
Deer in
some.
headlights, something like that?
Yeah,
we
or
went
something
through
like
that
that.
rapidly, and there's a lot to go through here.
Yeah.
I know that we had submitted one of our items to the county for a blueprint involved putting some blueprint dollars towards this, so obviously that's a consideration. I'm going to say this, I don't know if anybody else is, I'm a little disappointed because I know a couple years ago when we first started talking about decentralization, at least I was under the impression that we were going to achieve a lot of the things that were being presented here with what we had, and clearly we did not do that. And so we implemented a plan of decentralization, and now we have a substantial price tag in front of us. I want to do right by our consumers. I want to do right by the people who use our system, and I definitely want more people using our bus than currently do. But this is a substantial investment, and yes, I think it's going to require a great deal of discussion.
Right. And Commissioners, I don't know whether you remember this or not because it is so complex and detailed, but when we brought you the plan, you actually asked us to implement it in phases. And this is the first phase. This is the planned concept that we would bring back to you, a discussion of additional resources needed to upgrade the plan to the next level.
Any other comments? Commissioner Miller.
Well, the only comment is that I just wanted to make it clear to the public that by accepting the report, that doesn't mean anything in tune to we're done here. I mean, this is a work in progress, and obviously there are places where more investments needed to make more change. And also, we're only a little over a year into a massive redo. I mean, this change affected every single rider, and it's not easy to undergo those changes. It usually takes 2 to 3 years for people to get used to any new situation. So I feel comfortable with where we are at this point. I think it was good time to have you come in and give us all an update and see exactly where we are. And yes, I can see that we do probably need to have a longer discussion on where we're going to go next.
We will have some additional discussion on this. I'm quite frankly pleased at the progress we're making, and we must continue to look at it and maybe tweak it and do things we have to do. But again, I think we need to see if we can offer our customers more choices on how they use the system. And I think we need to take advantage of the technology that's available for systems like this. We need to look at that and see if that can be something where we can offer more choices to our customers. And that to me is the key. All right. No more. Can I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item.
Next item is 13.08, compensation package for city attorney effective January 1st, 2013. I believe Cassandra Jackson is going to present that item.
Ms. Jackson, very quickly.
Thank you, Mayor, City Commissioners. You have before you the recommendation which you requested from the Human Resources on October 10th, 2012. At that time, you appointed, effective January 1st, 2013, Louis Shelley as the city attorney, and you directed that we work on a recommendation of a compensation package. Mr. Shelley has 32 years of experience practicing law. 27 of those years have been for the city of Tallahassee. In light of his substantial experience, we are recommending a 10% increase. A 10% increase in his salary, along with the executive benefit package, as outlined in the agenda item. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions, comments? Move.
Approval. Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item.
The next item on our list is target issue update. And Commissioners, we have one report today from Long Range Planning, and this is Commissioner Mushton's last meeting, and he is going to present the last item on the agenda.
No, it's not the last.
The last commission item on the agenda.
Well, and some of this has been overtaken by events, the Appalachian Parkway beautification we talked about earlier. Brian mentioned the mobility fee. We met with staff and kind of discussed a range of different options that they've been considering. I think the bottom line is that they're going to work on that over the course of the next year and bring something back. There's going to be required to be a study for it. There's a bunch of legal issues associated with that, but that's in place to essentially replace the concurrency program that we have now. And then on the noise ordinance, if you'll recall, we had talked about a pilot program for to get some noise monitors that we could use in different areas. That's been underway. There's a proposal to have kind of an entertainment district noise level and then kind of a other noise level.
Makes sense.
And trying to come up with the exact noise levels is a little bit of art and science. So that's kind of in process too. Commissioner, if you have anything I've missed as part of that?
Nope.
Anything else? All right.
We're on unagenda speakers.
Agenda speakers.
Mayor, we have two speakers tonight, Curtis Baines and Erwin Jackson. Mr. Baines will be first.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Curtis Baines, 1323 East Tennessee Street. I just wanted to take a moment. On my speaker card, I had mentioned that I wanted to speak about something that you had deleted from this evening's agenda, the surveillance services contract, which I guess comes up, is going to be delayed until next week. But really my concern is a little bit broader than that, and it has to do with the willingness and the ease with which you are accepting every little chip away at the Fourth Amendment. Maybe my paranoia is running amok, but I think as I get older, my libertarian streak is growing about geometrically to my age, I guess. But every time I see Homeland Security, as you earlier dealt with an issue on rapid ID, surveillance, fusion. So these are all things that turn my insides into knots. And the biggest issue is it's all under consent. There's not the first bit of discussion. I know when it comes under consent, that's more of an administrative issue that you're performing a ministerial function, on behalf of the city to accept an administrative issue. Chipping away at the Fourth Amendment should not be an administrative issue. That should be a policy question that warrants some kind of discussion. And I see that this is coming up. I guess it was under the consent tonight, and I presume it was going to be coming up under consent next week or whenever it's presented again. But I just hope that we will get away from just readily accepting this chipping away at least having some kind of discussion about some of these issues that are coming before us. I mean, we've just kind of gotten complacent into just readily accepting that, we don't have to be concerned about what government is doing with our rights. And, now that the federal government with the Patriot Act doesn't really care about our rights, it's going to come down to you because they're depending upon you to do all of these things and implement all these things on their behalf. So I would hope we would start questioning a little bit more some of these things that we're doing with this. Thank you.
Next speaker is Erwin Jackson.
13.
This will be the final speaker, Mayor, unless someone else in the audience has a forum for us.
Erwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. The main reason I came here tonight was to thank Commissioner Mustian for the years that he's worked here. I've not always been real positive. I've always tried to be helpful. One thing I felt great about Mr. Mustian, almost always we agreed. Secondly, is he's always looking about the spending and misspending of this commission. I certainly hope that one or two or maybe three commissioners will take over where he left because we need 2 or 3 people to watch it about the spending. I remember the first time I got really excited is when I looked at a video back in 2005. And I know Commissioner Mustian was my hero. he looked at the other commissioners, and they said, yeah, we want this deferred compensation. Mr. Mustian looked at it, Commissioner, and said, it's just not right. This is giving ourselves a raise. Mr. Mustian didn't say, is it legal? He just said it's not right. And he voted against it. I cheered him. I said, dang good, I'm excited. Well, then one thing led to another, and I found out that he went ahead and then accepted the money. And we've talked about it. But if it wasn't right initially, then don't accept the money. Alan Katz grabbed the money and ran. Debbie Lightsey grabbed the money and ran at the very end of her service that she provided for years. Commissioner Mustian has told me privately, it's stated up there, it's been reported in the newspaper in the past, that wait till the end, we're going to give this, we're working out, we're going to give the money back to the city, because that deferred compensation money belongs to the city. It's not your money. Well, and I read in yesterday's paper that, and it hurt me, Commissioner, because I expected more from you. You know, right now I'm more disappointed than you than I am the mayor.
I got to go to the restroom.
And that's true, sir. And the reason I'm so terribly disappointed, I don't care if you want to use the money for literacy, music, festival. I don't care if you want to do whatever. It's our money, it's not yours. I've asked commissioners to contact the IRS and ask for an IRS opinion. No one's willing to do that. We could resolve this. I'm getting tired of being up here. We've been doing this for 2 years, and after waiting 2 years, you've decided to keep the money and unfortunately take the money and run. I hope you will think about this, because I wouldn't want that act to tarnish your reputation, which I've supported. Thank you, sir.
Any additional? Let me respond to that briefly. My last, one of my last official actions, I found one of the things that you find in dealing with the public is people kind of hear what they want to hear, and so I have said, and nothing has changed on this from day one, that I do not intend to keep the money, the deferred comp money. That's a decision that all of the commissioners that received it will have to make. But I want to have a say as to where it's going to go. And so I'm going to donate that to several things, including this literary festival that I'd like to see, that I think would be a good thing for the city. And I've pretty much the same thing I've said from day one on this. So there shouldn't be any surprise in that. Just while I have the floor here, I want to say this is my last meeting. I've enjoyed serving as a city commissioner. I appreciate the citizens allowing me to serve. One of the best things about it is the quality of the people that I've worked with. And I think I said this the first meeting I got here, that the staff of the city of Tallahassee, I mean, people around the state look to see what is Tallahassee doing. And I am very proud to have worked here, very proud to work with the quality of the staff we have. And one of the myths around the community is, those government people, they don't work very hard. I mean, these people up here, these people back here, they work as hard as anybody in the private sector anywhere. I mean, there's just a ton of hours, a ton of work, and so I really appreciate it. I've also had the benefit of serving with really fine people on the city commission, and as you know, I represent different cities and counties. There's a lot of them that are very dysfunctional, that have a lot of people that, really dislike each other personally that are on the commission. And I've been very blessed not to have dealt with any of that. And really, I mean, all of the people that I've served with, Commissioner Lightsey, Commissioner Katz, Commissioner Miller and Ziffer, but particularly the guys that we came in together, these three here. And so I will, there's parts of this that I'll miss, and parts of it I won't. But I've enjoyed serving, and thank you to the citizens for letting me do that.
Yeah.
I know we all want to say something before we end. I know we all want to say something, and I will too, to the class of 2003. Commissioner Mustian, it has been not only a pleasure but an honor serving with you. really, you have brought something to this commission and to this city that's really very, very good and outstanding. Your demeanor, the things that you say, you know, it's kind of like E.F. Hutton. You know, when Mark Mushroom speaks, everybody listens. And that's a very, very good thing. And obviously we're going to miss you. We can't get you to change your mind since we had the election last night. So we're going to have somebody replacing you. But you'll still be a part of, as far as I'm concerned, this commission, and hopefully we can depend on you in certain circumstances to give us some assistance if we need it. And I feel certain that you're going to probably tell some of us at some point in time maybe what we're doing, fiscally or otherwise. And I welcome that kind of input from you, because we always know it's going to be sage advice, wise advice, and well thought out. So we are going to miss you, but thank you for your service to this commission and to the citizens of the city of Tallahassee. Commissioner.
Yeah. I want to join in saluting Commissioner Mushin, class of 2003. Our numbers are shrinking. You know, you were one of the, it took me a while to figure you out when we first got on the commission. In fact, I didn't spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure you out. I was really just trying to jot down whatever Commissioner Lighty was writing, since she was the most senior of us. But once I got accustomed to the fact that she was, you know, repeating explicatives on her paper, no, I'm joking, I started to tune in a lot more to your, you know, to your quiet character, but, you know, a real true force to be reckoned with. Commissioner Mushin's legacy will not only include your work on Gaines Street and on Blueprint 2000, which preceded your service here, negotiating many hairy situations between us and county and other intergovernmental agencies, liaisoning with Florida State University, negotiating the Walani plantation purchase and solution, the aggregating of property along Gaines Street toward the end of having a better, bigger, brighter vision for what would ultimately happen there. And the list could go on and on and on and on and on. And you've done so much of this without any praise, any fanfare, without speaking loudly at all. And I've never once up here on this dais wondered or questioned why it is that you are here. It has been very, very clear that you absolutely love this community from the bottom of your heart, that your service here every day has been toward that end and toward that mission. I regret even some of the comment made tonight, because I think it's silly that your day here might end in that way, but in some ways it's fitting, because it shows, it really does show the cycle of service, and the fact that it's oftentimes underappreciated, that your contributions are not always exclaimed from the highest mountains, but I want you to know that I know that the city employees recognize it. I absolutely know that the citizens of this community recognize it. But as a peer of yours for now almost 10 years, I absolutely recognize it, have immeasurable respect for you. And I know that whatever you do after this place will be made better for it, because you've touched it and you've been by it. You've been an amazing contribution to the city, and I'm thankful.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Well, the first thing I want to say is this may seem like goodbye, but it better not be goodbye. There's too much knowledge. I know that you have too much commitment to several initiatives around, one of them being how we define going forward in the future with Blueprint also. So I look seriously forward to seeing you on a regular basis and hearing your thoughts. And I have to mention that basically it is Commissioner Mushin's fault that I actually ran for office, because when we discussed it, I thought, you know, if he thinks that I should do this, I think that I should consider it too. So thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure all these years since we started working on Blueprint. But as I said, as far as I'm concerned, this is not goodbye.
Commissioner Ziffer, you got any comments?
I do, but we're going to have another opportunity. Don't we have like a passing of the torch event at some point?
November 19th.
In my 3 years, Commissioner Muschin has supported me on some votes. He's scolded me on other things. And I have learned from every moment working with you. And it has been a tremendous honor. I was reminded earlier, and I will say that I plan on continuing Commissioner Muschin's comments he makes. There was somebody that came forward earlier and said, I wrote it down here, y'all have to spend more money. And I was reminded right away of something that Commissioner Muschin always says, and that is, it's not our money, it's taxpayer money. And we have to continually remind ourselves, it's this, whenever we agree to anything or support anything or vote anything, it's not our money, it's your money. And so I think you'll probably find me saying that quite often. I might even refer to you, if that's okay, because it's an honor to be, I would think if it was me, to be remembered as being so watchful and cautious of taxpayer dollars. And for that, I've learned a great deal from you, and I want to thank you, and it's been, like I said, an honor to serve with you.
You know, in an interview with the Tallahassee Democrat, they asked me what I thought about Commissioner Muschin, and I made some comments, and they did print them, and I appreciate that. And that is the ability, and you alluded to him, Commissioner Muschin, and that is the congeniality and the camaraderie or whatever we have on this commission to disagree without being disagreeable. And a large part of that has to do with your personality and, quite frankly, with the personality of the other commissioners that we can do, and we can do things on behalf of this city without that kind of acrimony. Unfortunately, we sometimes have that kind of acrimony from other individuals in our audience, and I regret tonight what happened, but Mr. Jackson can't help himself in many circumstances. So I do regret that. You have served us well, and you weren't deserving of that, and I really appreciate your service. Thank you very much. I got any more sharing of ideas? I got a couple more. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I don't know if Commissioner Miller is going to comment on this, but there are still tickets available. Commissioner Miller will be dancing for American Lung Association this Saturday night. We expect great things. I will say that I think that anyone that goes through this process, I have great respect for, and I look forward to perhaps other representatives. The city manager's gone through this, and perhaps others will follow. But
Commissioner.
Yes.
Perhaps Commissioner Gill. But I want to thank you for going through this, because I had mentioned this last week. The supporting Breast Cancer Awareness Month was a tremendous moment for this commission to wear our pink bras, but twice as many women die from lung cancer every year than they do breast cancer. And it's something that anything we can do to raise funds for that, I have great respect for. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Well, life has been, to some degree, all about the Oxygen Ball, which is this Saturday at the University Center Club. You can get tickets by calling the American Lung Association office here in Tallahassee, Patty Ballantyne, and please say that I told you to call. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and if you miss it, you're going to miss it. If you miss a little, you're going to miss a lot, because I really don't anticipate doing this again. So there's that. It will be a nice day on Sunday morning to wake up and not be practicing my dance on that particular day. I want to thank the band again. What a great thing to walk in here and see all of this color. It was really exciting, and to hear them, that was really a terrific idea. And I wanted to congratulate Mike Johnson again, because what a handy guy to have around the house. I mean, really, he can probably fix everything. So on that note, just again, we'll see you on the 19th of November.
I just want to take an opportunity to thank the voters of Leon County. And what they voted, everybody came out, they studied the issues, it looked like, they made a decision. We got new leaders at the national level, the state level, and the local level. And what we have to do now is to make sure that those voices are heard, and make sure that we now actually come together and do some good and continue to do good. We're doing a good job, I think, a very good job at the local level. I just hope our state and national leaders, quite frankly, understand that they have to do that as well. And maybe we can, move forward, move this nation. The people have spoken. Now it's time for those individuals who are elected to govern. And it's time for us to help them govern. And I hope we would do that. It was really a remarkable experience for me. I remember early voting at the courthouse on Saturday. It really, truly was heartening for me to be out there for actually 4 or 5 hours to see the line wrap around the courthouse. And then periodically I would ask individuals in the line who were first-time voters. And I would guess, this is a guesstimate on my part, that at least a third of those individuals in those lines were first-time voters, students primarily, who were proud to stand in that line and be able to cast their first vote ever. And if you had been there to see that, if many of you have been there, Commissioner Gillum was there, it was really rather remarkable. And this is what democracy is all about. And it really was a remarkable scene. Now, having said that, also, we had a terrible event happen in the Northeast. We had Hurricane Sandy to come through. We need to determine as a community what we might be able to do in order to help those victims now. And so I intend to get together with the head of the Red Cross, who happens to be out of town right now. We're going to try and do it today and see if we can come up with some ideas of how this community can help the victims of Hurricane Sandy. So look for a press event at some point in time. We haven't determined when. Look for a press event sometime, and I'll ask you all to join me so that we can determine, and if you got ideas on how we can do that, how we can help the victims of Hurricane Sandy, please let us know, and we're going to do that. So I just wanted to share those two things with you. Anything else? With that, we stand adjourned.
Bicycle, recreational amenities, typical of other blueprint projects. Sometimes people have looked at this side of the county as not having all the good things that other sides do, and I think that this kind of calls to an end. We're going to have one